Mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Superintendent Adams, do you have a report for us?
I do. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you, members of the public. Our Student Support Services team has been working diligently over the past 2 weeks with our community healthcare partners to assist families in meeting New York's new immunization requirements. We worked with Whitney Young Health Center and the Albany County Department of Health to schedule a variety of immunization clinics this week and next week at community locations in several of our buildings. We have more information about those opportunities available here tonight at our table, so please feel free to pick up a flyer. District-wide, as of midday today, we had approximately 187 students who were excluded from school due to missing immunizations. That number will continue to decline thanks to the clinics our partners have scheduled and to the ongoing work that our team is doing to work with our families. We will have a more detailed update on immunizations at our November 7th board meeting. We're getting excited for our annual Hall of Fame and homecoming festivities this weekend. Albany High was able to get things started with a variety of Spirit Week activities this week. Today was Professional Day. That concludes tomorrow with Falcon Friday and our homecoming pep rally at the end of the school day. Friday night, we will celebrate the 6 members of our Hall of Fame class of 2019 and our annual induction dinner. We would like to congratulate this year's inductees. Former physical education teacher and state champion, Coach Leslie Baguki, former Board of Education president and current Schenectady City Court judge, Tanika Frost, state champion swimmer, Elizabeth Graffuri Kearney, former guidance counselor and ABSTA president, Bill Ritchie, former Albany High and Naval Academy student athlete, Damon Shepard, and former Albany High student athlete and decorated U.S. Army Sergeant, the late Sonia Michelle Smith Summers. You can read more about our inductees in the Hall of Fame section at albanyschools.org. Homecoming at Albany High is on Saturday. We will honor our Hall of Fame inductees once again with the Wall of Fame ceremony at noon before enjoying our homecoming festivities and parade. The parade steps off from the North Main parking lot at 1 p.m. The football game against Columbia kicks off at 2:30 p.m. and the day culminates with the homecoming dance for our students on Saturday night. It is always a fun weekend, and I'm looking forward to all of these activities. We had the pleasure of celebrating student achievement for our exceptional student reception at Albany School of Humanities on Wednesday evening. The reception honors the students who are selected to represent their schools in our annual district wall calendar. The students are selected based on their achievement in academics, athletics, extracurricular activities, or community service, and our students usually excel in multiple areas. Our calendar students represent the exceptional talents of all of our students district-wide, and we are honored to be able to recognize them each year. On Wednesday morning, I had the honor of joining Mayor Sheehan and some of our community partners to help kick off the mayor's annual Cash for Coats campaign. This annual citywide effort raises funds to purchase coats and other warm winter wear clothing for our students. You may also donate to this fundraising campaign online at the city's Cash for Coats GoFundMe page. You may also make donations in person at several locations throughout the city, including City Hall, Lodge's Department Store on North Pearl Street, and the Palace Theater box office. The Palace also will be collecting donations at concerts and events throughout October. Incubus concert Friday night, the Pretenders movie premiere on Saturday. Please make sure that you attend the events and look for more information about how you can help this fundraising effort. You may visit albanyschools.org. I also would like to recognize another of our partners for a similar contribution to our school district. Berkshire Bank supported donations of winter coats for every student at Arbor Hill Elementary School through the Operation Warm program. Our students received their new coats at school last week. We are so very grateful for the caring support of Berkshire Bank and all of our community partners. Let's give them a round of applause. Excuse me. Even though we are early in the school year, we have already beginning to look ahead at the next year for Albany High School. The brochure and application for Albany High's 2021 Academy Lottery will be available beginning on Tuesday. The lottery is primarily for students currently in 8th grade, as well as students interested in transferring into Albany High or switching academies for next year. The lottery is open to all current district students who will be in high school next year, as well as students in private, parochial, and charter schools who will be in high school next year. The application deadline is November 12th, and the 2021 Academy Lottery will be held on December 3rd. I wanted to share a reminder that we have 2 scheduled days off coming up this month. Our schools and offices will be closed next Wednesday in observance of Yom Kippur, and also will be closed on the following Monday, October 14th, in observance of Columbus Day. Also, please note that next Friday, October 11th, will be our annual Go Home Early drill. All of our schools will dismiss 15 minutes early that day, and there will be no after-school programs or activities at our schools, with the exception of regularly scheduled athletic events. More information is available at albanyschools.org. I now would like to welcome Principal Teresa Brown to tell us more about the great things happening here at Thomas O'Brien Academy of Science and Technology.
Test, test. Thank you, Superintendent Adams. Welcome, Board of Education members, Central Office Administration, students, parents, community members, teachers. Welcome to Toast. Up on the first slide, we have the district vision and mission, which we modeled our Toast vision and mission after. And our Toast vision is where we want to be. Toast will be a community school that provides equitable educational opportunities and cultivates nurturing relationships within a safe environment for all students to be successful. And the way we're trying to get there is our mission, and I know the students can say this with me, right? Because I don't want to say this all by myself, all right? So the mission of Toast is to educate our, there you go. Awesome. They didn't even look at the screen. That was really good. And our goals, we put the same goals as the district because in our SEP plan, we'll talk a little bit about that, address all of the district goals as well. Some of our demographics, which we're familiar with, but I'll go over those with you again. We are a pre-K through 6 school, and we also have 4 self-contained special education classes. We have 479 students at this time. And our students with disabilities are 11%. Our ENL population is 13%. Our Asian population is 25%. Our Black population is 40%. Hispanic 16%. White 9%. Multiracial 9%. And we have 54% male and 46% female. So our SEP plan this year has some common themes across the district. Some of the other schools as well have the similar themes. But one of the things we're really trying to improve upon in our teaching and instruction is student voice, having students be able to talk about their learning, know what they're learning. And we're going to be doing that through some professional development on unpacking the learning standards, so having the teachers take time instead of just saying, I can do a specific thing, really break down that learning standard and teach the students and have them talk about what they're expected to learn and know and do. We're going to be expanding our STEAM curriculum experiences, and the students are going to talk a little bit about that, but over the summer, We have a map, a STEAM map that integrates our field trips, integrates Wonders, and this year we worked in the FOSS, the new FOSS curriculum for grades 4 and 5, as well as hands-on experiences with the flying classroom associated with those units. So there's some expansion upon that this year. Each day we're having 15 minutes of community building time for our students and our teachers to kind of have some downtime to get to know each other, to get to talk about issues, to talk about things that are concerning them, so we get to building those relationships with our students whenever we need to during the day. It could be more than 15 minutes if things are going on in the class that need to be talked about, so that we can see each other as a family, as humans, that we all share some of the same issues, so we can start to build some empathy and community building. And we're doing a lot more of restorative justice practices through the discipline system in lieu of suspensions and in-school suspensions, detentions, et cetera. And of course, the district's goal to increase the attendance rate is going well at Toast. We have 96 point something percent attendance, like 0.7, so we're doing really well with our attendance. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have, we're going to talk about our state scores from last year. We went up 11% in math, but we only increased, we did increase, but we only went up 1% in ELA. And some of the things that we're working on this year to help us increase those ELA scores for next year is our data team focus has been on math. This year we're going to begin data teaming with 5th and 6th grade at the beginning of the year in ELA, use them as pilots and learn the ELA data teaming process with 2 grade levels first before we spread it throughout the entire school. Our ELA coach is going to be doing coaching cycles with our teachers. The new Lexia program addressing ELA is going to be used in RTI ELA as well as during centers during ELA time. There's going to be, as I said before, professional development around student voice and unpacking the learning standards for ELA. Every student in the school has an ELA data folder that they're setting their own goals and taking charge of their own ELA goals, so they know what they're expected and what they can reach in the ELA. We just yesterday did professional development for Wonders writing with all grade levels, as well as ENL teachers, reading teachers, and our special education teachers. Our administrative walkthrough feedback will also assist in growing in ELA. And we're going to have early literacy workshops with our families of our early learning pre-K, K for families through our community schools program. Whoops. So our successes, as I said, we had 11% increase in our math New York State test scores school-wide. I want to shout out our 4th grade team. I told them I wasn't going to do it, but here they are. 3 teachers over there, Caitlin Shaldo, Jackie Tassetta, and Kayla Williams, had double-digit gains in both ELA and math, the best in our school. You never see them go anywhere without each other in the building, and they plan together, and they're an incredible team, and that's how just proves that we want our scores better than that, right, guys? But look at that. We have all of our teams really made a rise. The 6th grade team also had a double-digit gain in ELA, 10 to 20%. We've had 7% decrease in their discipline referrals from last year, from the year before to last year. And this is the first time I've heard of this award, the 2019 Good Apple Growth Award from the New York State PTA we had 100% membership growth in our PTA, so our PTA is growing, and that's a really great goal. Okay, we're up to our student presentations, which is the most fun part, and they can come on up now. And 3 of them, I think, are going to speak first about some of the questions the board had that wanted to be answered, right? Do we have those 3? Ms. Whipple, which 3 were they? They were going to read their little bio, why they love Toast. Who's doing that? I know Frederick is, right? Who are our 3 going to read about why they love Toast? Come and sit down here. They have it, right? They don't have it? Do they have it?
Yeah, they can hold that. I love toast because the principal is nice, and in fourth grade, you get to sit in a VIP chair.
I love toast because the teachers are nice.
I love toast because the teacher and the students are really friendly. I like toast because you can make new friends.
I like toast because in computer lab we did the VR.
Hello, I am Tatiana, a fourth grade student in Miss Williams' class. We are going to show you a little glimpse in our study of bees and their crucial impact on our ecosystem.
Hello, I am Frederick, a fourth grade student in Miss Williams' class. You might think bees are trying to bother humans and sting us on purpose, but that's not true. They are just defending themselves because they think we are going to attack them. During science lab, we learned about structure of plants and how bees pollinate. We learned about how we can save the bees by planting plants that attract bees. In the garden, we planted dahlias, mint, and sunflowers, one step closer to saving the bees.
Hello, I'm Farsad, a fourth grade student in Mrs. Shaldow's class. Did you know honeybees live in hives or colonies? The members of the hive are separated into three categories: the workers, the drones, and the queen. In art, we explore the anatomy of bees' honeycomb structures and used geometric shapes to create our own bee masterpiece.
Hello, I am Nortaj, a fourth grade student in Ms. Tissetta's class. 1 in every 3 bites of food depends on bees for pollination. Because bees, we have food like nuts, beans, apples, and cherries. In writing, we combined a friendly letter curriculum and wrote letters to the Congress about passing the Saving Americans Pollination Act.
Hello, I'm Solange, a fourth grade student in Ms. Sheldow's class. Bees are important because they collect pollen from flowers and bring the pollen to plants, which the plants use the pollen to grow things we need. Without bees, we wouldn't have enough food to eat because they help pollinate crops to make our food. We will be going on a field trip to 5 Rivers. On this field trip, we will be hands-on investigating bees, hives, and their ecosystem. We will end the trip by tasting honey straight from a beehive.
In computer lab, we already went on a virtual field trip through the use of virtual reality goggles. We traveled to a bee colony and experienced a day in the life through the lens of a bee.
Buckle up as we buzz.
All the board members just received a pair of the VR goggles. Once you put them on, Farsad is going to let us know what you will be seeing. Could you have that paper on? Very cool. You can just explore through the beehive.
You are looking at the inside of a beehive. You can see the worker bees around the hive protecting it and bringing back the nectar and pollen. The bees places the honey in the honeycomb cell and seals it using beeswax. This is used to feed the young bees and workers during the winter. Beekeepers also help feed the bees during the winter.
Thank you, board members, for your time and interest in our educational journey. We appreciate you.
We hope that you have enjoyed your virtual tour of the Beehive, and at this point, this concludes our superintendent's report. And thank you so very much to all of our students and our presenters today. This was outstanding. Thank you so very much. And thank you to our teachers.
Thank you all so much. You guys did a great job, and I particularly like to see the art that you have on display over here. It's really nice to see it integrated thematically with the curriculum. It's really terrific. So, per our policy, we set aside up to 30 minutes of our meeting, each meeting, to hear from district residents, parents, students, and other members of the public. We welcome your input about the decisions we're making tonight, and also by email, phone, and postal mail. Tonight, there's only 3 people signed up, but in the unlikely event that we end up with more people than can be accommodated in 30 minutes, we can choose to extend the length of that public comment period, or alternatively, to establish a second public comment period later in the meeting. We invite everyone who speaks to stay for the balance of the meeting and to consider coming to our meetings on a regular basis or listening in to the recorded meetings if you can't join us in person. It's always helpful to us when teachers, students, families, and other community members are knowledgeable about the decisions we're facing and share their thoughts with us. If you're speaking tonight, while you're making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, we ask that you keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. Please share your concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal. If you feel the concern is not addressed adequately, you may appeal to that person's supervisor, up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board's policy is to not respond during public comment. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When I recognize you, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Ms. Wilson, our board secretary, will give you a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice, and I will notify you if your time has expired. It's a good idea to look up occasionally and make eye contact with the lovely Ms. Wilson so you won't be surprised at the end of your 3 minutes. The first name on the list tonight is Rose Guerrero. I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. Please correct me if there's a better way to pronounce it. Come right to the microphone here. We do need you to speak into the mic because it's recorded, so there's a little switch on top. If you just pull that towards you, that will turn it on if it's off.
Thank you, Andre. Good evening, board. I'm here today just for a quick glimpse into my evening. Tonight, I had to pick up my grandson from school, Edmund O'Neill, and there was an incident where he had I'm going to call it a meltdown because that's what the school always calls it. I went there. I was a little nervous. Mom couldn't go. She doesn't have a car. Dad was at work in a meeting. He couldn't leave. So I opted to go. When I went, it was a little past the time that probably they expected me to be there. However, I saw my grandson. I was not really ever met by the principal, which I wish I would have had been. I spoke to Miss French. She told me what was going on and told me, which my theme to this discussion is protocol or lack of. She told me that because no one had picked up my grandson, that Parsons Crisis Intervention Mobile Unit was sent to the school. My grandson was reckless and he was inappropriate with language during an art class. However, he does not have a 504. He does have an IEP. And on numerous of times in the past, I've asked for a functional behavior plan if they feel that he needs something for incidences like this, but I'm never told that I needed
Ms.
it.
Guerrero, this is a very specific regarding your grandson, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to speak to one of our administrators about this directly so that they can try and help solve your particular situation, or if you think this is a board policy, broad-based issue, and if so, if you could speak to that in those terms rather than specifics. Is that possible?
I'll try. It just happened, and
And we're happy to address it, and we do have the staff members here right now who, Ms. McKenna is right here and is happy to talk to you about this at this very instant, if you would prefer.
sure.
If you wanna
But I
talk to-
do want to say, I mean, I'm very sorry for cutting you off. I do want to say that the police had to come to the house along with the crisis intervention, all not necessary, and I just want the board to be aware of that. I would have talked to the principal and administration if they would have came to me. Nobody, only the social worker, Mrs.
I
French.
understand.
That was it.
Thank you very much for sharing
Thank
with
you.
us. And Ms. McKenna right here is available to help work this through specifically around your specific situation, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
The next name on the list is Janine Sullivan.
Good evening. My name is Janine Sullivan. I live in Albany, New York. I'm speaking concerning how the district is handling the recent repeal of the law for religious exemption. Families that are going through this process are going through a very difficult time. And I've spoken to a number of them, and when we don't feel that we're being treated kindly. It's hard for a number of reasons. A lot of us did not choose this route, but had a child that was injured by a vaccine and were directed to go this route because it's very narrow, the definition of what gets a medical exemption. So we found ourselves in this boat because of something that was completely out of our control. And now many of us have special needs children because of this, and are being told things like, well, I don't know if you're going to get special needs services because you're homeschooling because of the immunization thing. And I think that there needs to be some consideration here to families that are going through this. We're trying to figure out how we go forward. We want our children educated, and we want to be treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Laura Duran.
Good evening. I'm a parent of two Albany City School District children, and also occasionally substitute in our schools. And first off, just saying I wouldn't have my kids anywhere else. So thank you all, everybody who's not here too, for the great job y'all are doing for the students. I am here tonight. I attended a presentation at our school, my younger child's school, Montessori Magnet, about the computer-based instruction. I wasn't aware that it was a mandate that every child has to spend what's going to amount to about almost 50 instructional hours this year on Lexia and Dreambox, two programs. I've seen them in action. Some kids enjoy them, some kids don't. I've seen kids who are struggling in school who enjoy it, kids who are struggling in school who are very frustrated, and I've seen kids who are really advanced get very frustrated because if they hesitate too long to click a certain thing, or if the Chromebook is glitchy, it starts the entire lesson over and they have to sit there. I saw a little boy do this yesterday. He had to go through a lesson 2 or 3 times. He knew every answer. He was clicking the answer, but he would like look around for a minute and then click too late. And so he sat there just putting the headphones off because he didn't want to hear the lecture again and again from that. So, I think these things as tools are great. I'm not against it. I'm just concerned about the mandate and teachers not having leeway to use their professional judgment on whether these programs are working for a particular child, and this child being, basically, if they're going to be viewed as the problem is with the child, not the program, like when do we decide that maybe the program is not right for a child? Because 50 hours of instructional time is a lot of time for a child to spend on a program that may not fit them. So that's my concern, is just this mandated nature. Where is the leeway for teachers to use their professional discretion? It seems to just sort of been thrown on parents without any real notification at all. And so that's my concern. And then just want to note, just slightly related, and I understand, again, this is a tool that could help a lot of kids, so I'm not saying we shouldn't have it, just the mandated part. The other issue is just the NWA tests. I have a kid in middle school now, and we were always told it's used to inform instruction. That's fine, but what I've found out as they're in middle school, it's also used to decide, honors. It's helped. It's one of several things that can be used to determine honors or Regents classes. Parents aren't really told this early on, and we used to get reports 3 times a year. Now it's like pulling teeth to get the score report. Sometimes a kid will come home and say, I got this number, but we can't compare it to anything. So I would like to revisit getting those reports, please, to parents without having to make multiple phone calls and emails.
Thank you very much. That's the end of the public comment list for tonight, and on behalf of the board, we thank each of you for taking the time to share your thoughts with us tonight. We now move to the part of our meeting we call routine consent. During this portion of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district, like contracts, field trips, personnel matters, and the like. We review each of these carefully, and then we vote on them as a group with no discussion. That allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Each board member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require a separate discussion and vote on that particular item. So with that introduction, I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Motion by Ms. Krejci, second by Dr. Chittor. Are there any set-asides? We have a couple. Ms. Alexander-Mann. Number 9, the calculator donation. Ms. Wilson.
Item 31, Fourth Family Incorporated.
And Ms. Krejci.
Number 24, Center for Educational Leadership.
Ms. Smith.
Yes, if I could add to the donation ones, 10, 12, along with number 9.
Okay. Any other set-asides? Okay. All in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda, less the set-asides 9, 10, 12, 24, and 31. That is unanimous. Can we take 9, 10, and 12 as a group? Okay. So can I have a motion to adopt items 9, 10, and 12 on the routine consent agenda? Ms. Wilson, second by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Wilson. Is there any discussion? Ms. Alexander-Mann.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out I set aside the calculator donation, and I see there are 2 other donations, the batting cage and the scaffolding, and just for our community partners to come up and make these donations is very well received. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you to the donators.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you bringing those to the attention of the board and to the folks who were attending the meeting and listening in. All in favor of accepting those 3 donations? That is unanimous. And then I'm going to do them in numerical order. So may I have a motion to adopt the Center for Educational Leadership contract? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Alexander-Mann. Is there any discussion? Ms. Krejci.
I have 2 major concerns about this contract. Three concerns about the contract. The first one is when we discussed this contract last year, I was told that we were in the process of phasing this organization out to do turnkey, and I did notice that we're going down from 15 hours to 6 hours of studio classrooms in the coming year, but we're still keep contracting with this company, and I want to know when this legacy program is finally going to go away. My second concern is that the fees are increased compared to last year. The daily fee has gone up from $2,450 to $2,550. But in addition to that, the project management and virtual leadership costs have gone up. So on average, the cost per day has gone up more than $500 per day of studio classrooms. And I find that to be really out of line. I can understand that with economies of scale, we might be paying slightly more per day to have 6 days versus 15, but $500 more a day when you are talking about a vendor that is at least 20% more expensive than our other consultants, this simply isn't reasonable. Third, the effective goals. Last year, the CEL contract for these elementary school mathematics classrooms had a plethora of measurable goals. It involved surveys from the teachers, observations of the teachers teaching the strategies in the classrooms, pre and post math content tests for the teachers, and NWEA math test results for the students. And we haven't seen the results that were promised from last year. Like we haven't even gotten them, regardless of whether they're good or bad. Secondly, this year's contract has very watered down results. As a matter of fact, they're not even, you can't even read them. It says 100% of participating teachers will be observed using at least 3 of the studio classroom, and sentence doesn't finish. So I'm concerned that we didn't get the data, and I'm concerned that the standards are being reduced. I'm also concerned because last year we talked about it, and the 17-18 CEL contract had certain goals regarding student achievement, which, if people who were on the board last year remember, we didn't meet. As a matter of fact, I believe the performance in those classrooms went down compared to classrooms that didn't have this, and we were told at the time it was due to staff turnover in those schools. But at the time, many board members were saying, look, we're really concerned that we're paying all this money and the actual results are negative. I'd really like to put this aside and see results and really make sure that this is working, because I'm really done with this. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson-Turner?
So the measure results for this program are actually done through the MSP grant, and we haven't received that information yet, which is why it's not attached to this contract. As far as the phase out of this, as you mentioned, there is a reduction in hours. However, how we are approaching the work with CEL, specifically in the studio classroom model, when they bring the particular experts to work with our staff, is that we want that first point of contact for staff to be with the experts, and then the follow-up support is through our instructional coaches. So this year, you should notice in the contract proposal that there's a change in grade level that they're working with in each of these schools, and so the coaches are now taking responsibility for the grade levels that received the CEL contact last year. As for the price, it is a conversation that we have every year. We have no control over the price that they set. It's the price they set and use with every other district, and it does increase every year. And so it's the price that's offered. It's not been able to be negotiated, and we have shared with them what our parameters are and constrictions are around what we request from our contractors.
Any other board discussion?
I just wanted to know, it looked like it's also a different staff member from CEL that will be coming this year?
Yes, sometimes based on when we schedule, we don't get the same staff member, but we always get someone who is qualified to do that work. And last year, we were actually able to partner with a local professor to support that work as well.
So I guess I would like to understand, do we feel, I mean, many of these vendors are sole source vendors because they're teaching their particular thing, so by definition they're sole source. So I guess the question is, how do we as a district evaluate whether this particular vendor's tools and techniques are so superior to other vendors that it's worth their continually rising and already expensive prices?
I mean, I think the only thing that we have compared it to this point in time is the result this has produced for us versus other things that we have implemented in the district. And if you look at the data for the 3 schools in particular that were involved with this, their NWA results are substantially improved, particularly in areas of mathematics. And we look for that translation to continue to occur into their state assessments. teachers value the training. It actually changes not only the student assessment results, it changes the instructional practices that you see occurring in the classroom. It increases teachers' ability to understand the Common Core standards and be able to unpack them and teach them in a way that the students can actually reach the standard that we want them to. And so the schools that requested this contract in particular wanted to continue to grow SEL in their building from their first and second grade classrooms to their third and fourth grade classrooms, so that they have a continuum of services that students receive around instruction that is of high quality.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, so then I think we're going to take a vote on this. It may not be unanimous vote. That happens sometimes, and that's okay. All in favor of adopting the SEL contract? Okay, that is Ms. Wilson, Ms. Savage, Ms. Smith, Ms. Alexander Mann, and Mr. El-Manyawi. All opposed to the SEL contract? Ms. Krejci and Dr. Tator. Motion passes, or contract is adopted. Okay, I believe there is one more routine consent item, which is the Fourth Family Incorporated contract. Can I get a motion to accept that contract? Ms. Smith, seconded by, somebody raise your hand. Anybody raise their hand? Any second. Ms. Wilson. Any discussion? Ms. Wilson.
I just wanted to note that I was abstaining from this vote because I work rather close with the parties involved.
All in favor of adopting the Fourth Family Incorporated contract? That is everyone except Ms. Wilson, who has already stated that she abstains. And that brings us to the end of routine consent. And if I can get myself back on the agenda, the policy agenda. This is where I get to turn the microphone over to the chair of the policy committee, who is Dr. Chatur.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Today we have 3 action items for us on the policies that were discussed at the last board meeting, including 9140.1, which is staff complaints and grievances, 9000, which is personnel goals, and 9240, which is recruiting and hiring. As we discussed last time, there were basically very minimal wordsmithing revisions to update these policies. So I'd like to somebody want to make a motion to adopt these policies?
Ms. Wilson? Second. Ms. Alexander Mann?
All in favor?
That is unanimous.
Okay. And just for information, I also want to point out that even though there are no policy changes to 0115 and 0110, which is sexual harassment and student harassment, there are some changes to the regulations that go with it. And if people are interested in that, they are also posted on board docs, so people can take a look at that. The board doesn't usually vote on the regulations. Thank you.
Excellent. So that brings us to the audited financial statements.
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Roaring will introduce this section, this presentation. And so we are very pleased to have our auditor here. So thank you so very much. And Ms. Roaring.
Good evening. Good evening. I would just like to introduce Jamie Cody. He is our external auditor from Bonadeo, and he is going to hit some of the highlights from our external audit this year.
Thank you, Kim. Good evening, board members. We have completed the audit of the City School District's financial statements as of June 30th, 2019, and have issued our report, which is dated September 27th. We previously met with the audit committee and discussed our audit in detail. Tonight, I am going to summarize the audit for the board. I believe everything is posted on board docs already, so the 60-page document, we have issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance the CPA firm can give on a set of financial statements. A couple things to highlight on the budgetary basis of accounting, comparing actual results to budget. Revenue had a positive budget variance, meaning actual revenues were higher than budget revenues by $216,000. On the expense side, there was also a positive variance. The actual was lower than budgeted amounts by $6,000. On the actual results for the year, overall expenses, including transfers, exceeded revenues by $20 million. So the reason that you had a $20 million loss, though, was that there was a $15 million transfer to the Capital Projects Fund from your capital reserves, and there was also a $5 million use of fund balance. So overall, outside those those items, you would pretty much be breaking even for the year. Your general fund balance in total was $22.7 million. 11.8 of that was restricted for various purposes. 6 million of that was assigned, and 4.8 of that assignment is going to be used in the 2020 budget. That left you with $4.6 million in unassigned fund balance, which is 1.78% of the 2020 budget, which you cannot exceed 4% of the budget. So that is a positive. I'd also like to point out that we had no difficulties, no adjustments, no disagreements with management. So the audit went very smooth, and everyone is very cooperative, and the books are in good order and ready for us to audit when we show up. So with that, I would ask if there's any questions.
Board colleagues, does anyone have any questions or comments? I'm going to yield first to the chair of the audit committee, Ms. Krejci.
I just wanted to say, we discussed this last week in the audit committee, and I'll let this, since I can't talk very much, please let this also do double duty as my audit committee report. We discussed this in audit report. We discussed this in the audit committee at length last week.
Any other comments or questions for the auditor? Ms. Smith?
And perhaps this is really for the audit. I know that we looked at the extra classroom activity specifically this year. Did you make a plan or a proposal for what we will look at going forward?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Anyone else? If not, we thank you very much for your service. Ms. Roaring, we thank you for all of your work as you have brought this into our new world with you here. So we appreciate your taking the reins so firmly. And thank you very much for being here with us tonight. That brings us to a discussion of community schools. I should mention that was our last, oh wait, we have to adopt the audit. I almost forgot. Can I get a motion to adopt the audit? Ms. Krejci, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? That is unanimous. That would have been bad if we forgot to take that step, but we did not. So on we go to community schools, and we welcome Michelle Bridgewater. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, thank you. All right, good, because I forgot my glasses. So I'm here to talk about community schools, and this is I think this may be my third year providing an update to the board about the community schools model. For those who are new to the community schools, it's an opportunity for the district to establish programs within schools that allow schools to serve as a hub of services that support families beyond the traditional academic program. And so it's a set of partnerships, and so we've been lucky in this district to always have a significant number of partners in the community who support our work and our families. However, the efforts of the community school site coordinators is to bring those support services into the schools as a means to allow families to centralize the supports that they need to continue to grow. The model that we've chosen to use is a model that was established by the Children's Aid Society, and it's the three-prong model, which focuses on continuing to grow our academic program, provide additional enrichment services for our students, and what we typically have come to see is that our kids are having enrichment experiences that they would have never had if we had not had this model. Kids are partnering with science institutions, with the universities, with local housing agencies, understanding financial issues that could impact their community and their lives, and then just a lot of the fun things that kids usually get in programs that many of our families are able to pay for, which is a unique opportunity in what the community schools offer for our families. And then lastly is just those community support services, the social emotional supports, the medical, the dental, We have counseling in our schools right now, and as many of you know, with the immunization issue that changed over time, as a result of the partnerships that we have in our schools, we were really able to expedite the opportunity for our students to get those immunizations in a timely fashion. The community schools are funded by foundation aid. There's $3 million this year that has been allocated from foundation aid, and then we also have Schuyler Achievement Academy, who received the community schools grant as a result of their receivership and priority status many moons ago. And as you know, they're no longer in status, but we're able to continue to access those funds for an additional year. The fun part of this presentation, and I wish that all of our coordinators could be here tonight, because they are an amazing group of young people. They possess a passion for the community that exceeds what one would have expected in terms of understanding what our families need, really and willing to go out into the community and really have hard conversations with partners who they believe provide services that really need to be in our schools. And they've done a great job of working together to share those resources with each other so that not only their individual schools are benefiting, but that all of our schools are benefiting. We were lucky enough that New York State established a technical assistance center for community schools. And last spring, Abigail Gomes from Sheridan Prep was highlighted not only on their website, but in their first magazine that they put out to the state. And so there's some really great work that we should really be proud of. But I asked each of the schools to highlight some of the programs that they're doing. Arbor Hill, Shanae has done an amazing job. It is the strongest parenting program that we have in the city. She has a series of workshops she started many years ago with both mothers and fathers and guardians, where when those workshops are scheduled, those rooms, that parent room is packed. And families are excited. Parents are able to bring their young babies in and learn strategies for preparing their kids for school. They're able to learn financial issues and how to attack their financial situations. It's just the best program I've seen in terms of parent involvement and engagement. And I think it's what we've been always trying to get at, and what Shanae clearly understands is that when you give them what they need, they will come. At Giffen, Shanique Wadati has partnered to create an outdoor gardening experience for our kids, and not just a garden that looks beautiful, but that is edible, and also creates a unique learning space for kids during school and after school. Schuyler has their STEM sports after school program with the Fourth Family, and what is unique about that enrichment program is that it targets those students who are our most challenging students during the day. The students that the Boys and Girls Club and the Y did not have the capacity to support because their staff did not have that expertise. And the Fourth Family young men are really engaged with some of our most challenging young kids who not only had attendance issue and behavioral issues, but who are so excited to be a part of that program that we've seen some significant reductions in referrals and in improvement in attendance. At Sheridan Prep, Abby wanted to highlight their STEM program. It's a culinary program. It's been a 20-week program after school enrichment program. Again, attendance is a big issue for our targeted schools, and these programs, the students are so excited about the programming and the uniqueness of the programming that they're signing up. There's always a waiting list. We don't have enough space to give everybody what they want. But it speaks to the quality of our coordinators and understanding what our young people and families need and want and responding to that need. TOAST has created an ENL program that not only helps our ENL families access the central registration process and getting their child into school and looking at all the needs that families need to take care of prior to enrollment, but also offering classes that allow them to understand the academic program that their children are engaged in so that they are able to help support them in the after school. And then lastly, the Tony Clements Center has a PAL basketball program. And again, all of these programs were driven by the needs assessment that the schools did 3 years ago. And one component of the program is that students have an opportunity to participate in focus groups so that we become clear about what it is they're interested in as a means to continue to keep them engaged in school. And then lastly, I just wanted to share one example of the sorts of programming that each of the schools works towards. I highlighted Sheridan Prep, one, because they are working on attendance, which has been significant for them. We all know that chronic absenteeism has become an ESSA indicator for our district and for many schools throughout New York State, and has been a real challenge for Sheridan Prep. And so I'm not going to read through the programming, but what you'll see is that not only are the site coordinators being responsive to the needs assessment in which students and parents and teachers are saying they have needs, but also aligning their work to what the school building set plans are doing to try and improve those indicators that are identified in the set. And so that alignment exists between what's happening during the day and then the programming that's happening outside of the school day. And in some instances, there's programming happening during school day, and that too is to align with the SEP's goals to increase achievement, reduce chronic absenteeism, and help students with their social emotional supports. Lastly, I just want to highlight that what we're thinking of for this next year, O'Neill has a new partnership with the United Federation of Teachers and has begun to establish their community school. And I've had an opportunity to participate in some of their meetings and some of their sessions. And the UFT is a well-established community school model. And so we're going to use some of our community school funds to contract with them to support all the schools this year and redoing the needs assessment. It's been 3 years since we've had a needs assessment, so that we can get a sense of what program works for them, and are there additional programs and supports that families would like to have. And so that partnership will be a part of what we do this year. And then one of the biggest things we talk about with the community school site coordinators is just thinking about sustainability. We're lucky enough to have had the funding, but the economy can turn on us at a dime. And so they really are trying to be strategic in identifying partners who already have existing programs, like a Whitney Young, who will exist with or without funding. You know, families will always need medical care. We can bring those services in. Those are the kinds of partnerships we're really starting to, look at and be more strategic around. My biggest worry is that the money runs away, and then our kids no longer have the experiences. And so that's a real priority for us. And we'll use the United Federation of Teachers to help us plan a sustainability plan. And that's my presentation for tonight. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Ms. Bridgewater. We always love when you come and share your enthusiasm for the work with us, because we don't get to see it every day. We see lots of enthusiasm from many staff members, but we don't get to see an insight into community schools every day, and it's very heartwarming to see how it is impacting our students. So, board members, as always, we're going to do one question at a time. That allows each board member to get an opportunity to ask a question. If there's time, we will go around a second time, but there's no guarantees that there will be time. So prioritize your questions and ask your most important question first. Ms. Wilson has gently had her hand risen for about 3 minutes now. So, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation, and I want to applaud everyone involved in the community schools model, and again lift up, like you stated, our site coordinators, because I can't really say enough about the energy, the excitement, the innovation that they bring. Arbor Hill is my second home spa. I've seen that they obviously bring dental services and also a photography program. And one thing, when I visited, they were very cognizant of the larger ecosystem issues. For example, our students who may face housing instability, not a financial one, but maybe the landlords and things of that nature displaced our students. And they were very much attuned with all these sort of things that are more or less a temperature read on the family that people wouldn't think our schools deal with. And similarly, I saw that Giffen had a book vending machine, and these things like simply blow me away. I'm very touched by it, and they're beautiful.
Ms. Smith?
I echo Ms. Wilson's kudos to everyone involved in the community schools work. Just too important. And I also appreciate your statement about sustainability, because I think, and that was where I wanted to go, we as a community, I think, are certainly trying to figure out how we can take what existing resources we have to help support our schools in that way. But I also think, and I'm sure it must be on the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, is that correct, Madam President? Governmental, I said intergovernmental relations, to see what support we can continue to strive for and get from the state, because it's just all too important, an effort. I did have one question. I'm moving to the and this feels, after this wonderful presentation, feels like a little bit of intellectual question in a way. But I appreciate the linkage to the community schools framework, right? But within that framework, I saw a whole host of indicators for each one. And my question, and I probably know the answer to this, is our model set up so that it's almost, that each school has those same indicators that it is being measured on in terms of success, or are they kind of unique to each one? Just kind of wanted to understand what we can expect by way of measurement for this program.
Yes. So they are unique because the work is driven by the needs assessment process. And so when the community school advisory boards get together and looked at the culmination of the assessment process, they identify areas that families appear to say that they wanted, and then they identify those indicators that align with what families and students are saying they wanted. And so each school we actually had this year community site coordinators create a community school SEP. And so within that SEP, if you're interested, you can see the individual indicators and those indicators are driven by the needs assessment of the individual school.
Ms. Alexander Mann.
Ms. Bridgewater, I love your enthusiasm whenever you talk about community schools, and I'm a social worker by profession, and I love community schools. And so, I want to ditto what Ms. Wilson and Ms. Smith said. The staff that are involved with community schools are doing a wonderful job. I was at a committee meeting at SPA, and I saw hopscotch, something for, it was a way to help.
The sensory floor.
It was pretty cool,
yes,
and very innovative. So I just wanted to, give a shout out to those staff and also to you for the presentation.
Ms. Gracey.
I just wanted to thank you very much and say I'm so happy that these programs exist. A few years ago, when community schools were first coming to us, it was so abstract, it was hard to picture exactly what they would look like, and seeing what it's like and seeing the difference it's making in the lives of these kids is fantastic, so thank you.
Dr. Jator.
Great presentation. And it's so heartwarming to see success stories like this. We were in this, this wasn't the case 3 or 4 years ago. Now, you didn't touch upon an important point in terms of the funding, right? So what if the funding goes away? That's all something that we always worry about. And as part of Government Relations Committee, we would welcome input from you as to what is that we would like to address with respect to community funding to bring it up to our government officials. Now, my question is, if you had to pick one thing that is, throughout all these 7 schools successful, that you could use in the non-community school models, right? I mean, the schools that are not under the community school model, what could you implement there which would enhance them as well? They don't have the community school funding, but there are certain tricks and tips that they could also follow.
I think it would be inappropriate for me to identify something for those schools. I think that if you understand the needs assessment process looks at the data related to the school, it does focus groups and surveys for parents, students, and staff, and the work that comes into those schools is driven by that needs assessment. And absent that, we have been very and clear, and I've made it very clear that if it didn't show up in the needs assessment, we shouldn't be doing it. And so I think it would be inappropriate for me to identify something for some other school that hasn't had the opportunity to give voice to the work that they believe their community needs.
And I think as part of our conversation around setting priorities, we talked about trying to use really that as the tip and trick that we would bring forward to our non-community schools, which is do the needs assessment. Right, that's really it, is the understanding piece. And I can't remember, and the superintendent's nodding, so I'm optimistic that I've remembered it correctly, that we do hope to be able to accomplish that, or at least set the stage for that this academic year.
Madam President, members of the board, Madam President, one of the things that we would have to take a look at is how that needs assessment can be administered in concert with what we currently do in using the data to drive the information for the SEP. And when all of those dots can be connected, that's where we get to that real work. So while I understand and I totally agree with Ms. Bridgewater, one of the things that we could look at are what are the components of the needs assessment that we might be able to use in the non-community schools in order to ensure that our SEPs are truly aligned with their needs. Because right now, we believe that they are based on the data that we have. The needs assessment would just be one more tool that we could use to confirm we are absolutely doing the right work, headed in the right direction.
Mr. El-Manyawi.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. I have a few questions, two in specific.
Mr. El-Manyawi, welcome to the board. You get one question and one question only.
Okay.
If there's time, we'll ask a second question, but you only get one to start.
Thank you. Okay, the first question would be, is there a place that I can actually go and look at these HTML websites that these 30 students put together?
I will touch base with the site coordinator and get you access to those, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you can have a second question. That was really short.
Yeah. The second question is, can you tell me a little bit more about this walking school bus?
Oh, I love the walking school. So a few years ago, there weren't many coordinators on board at the time, but we visited New York City and community schools in New York City. And one school, an elementary school that we visited, one of their strategies to address attendance was that they have staff members disperse along the school route to encourage and walk kids to school. And so that parents don't always have to be the ones to get them there, that there are staff members along the route who can guide families and support families to get their kids to school. And so that's where that idea came from.
I love it.
So this is actually the drawback of you getting a second question, because that was my question.
Oh.
And so I would have asked that question if you hadn't, because when I was a brand new school board member, about on the board as long as you've been, my first school was Sheridan Prep. And I got to speak with the principal, Zuleika Sanchez-Gale, and we talked exactly about this. We talked about attendance issues and the need for some mechanism to get kids to school, and we talked about a walking bus and would that be possible. And one of the things I like about the walking bus, which I think is true, and I'm looking at Ms. Kimberly roaring in hopes that she knows the answer to this question, is that it's not transportation money because it's staffing money. So even though it's providing mechanism for kids to get to school, it's not subject to the transportation regulations. I hope she's looking at me with not uncertainty, so we will make sure she researches that, and we know that for a fact. But that, to me, is one of the great things about this, because this board has been very frustrated with the way the New York State Education Department and the New York State Legislature has defined transportation money in a way that we feel does not achieve equity. And this is a way in an urban environment where we can provide equitable transportation support for our close-in children who would not be eligible for vehicular busing, but we can use our resources in a different way to get them to school. So we appreciate the creative solution, and it end runs some of the problems that we're having with the state laws not being equitably defined. Does anybody have a second question? Ms. Wilson?
Thank you so much. And again, I wanted to ask, I know that we have some degree of specificity to the location with the needs assessment and even the partners that we identify. However, with the advisory board, and this sounds like a closed-ended question, so pretend it's open-ended, I'm sorry. But with the advisory board, is there like a prescribed approach, or is this sort of, again, back to the schools defining how they do it?
It's the schools defining how they're doing it, and the partnerships that they've had. So I think all the schools started with partners who had already established a commitment to the school. And over time, partners have come and gone depending on the programming that the school believes they need. Parents have come and gone, depending on their schedules. And so it's very unique. However, the site coordinators have requested facilitated and professional development support around strengthening that advisory board process. And so that's one of the components that we'll utilize the United Federation of Teachers to do for us.
Ms. Smith.
And I wanted to just piggyback on Mr. El-Minyawi's question. The program initiatives that you described here, I almost wanted to ask you, could you just give me a little tidbit about almost each one of them? Because I think, this is what's so exciting. I'm sorry?
If it would please the board, we could come back so that
Please.
everyone can be privy to that and provide a written summary in the SBU for maybe
Please.
next week or the week following, and then that way you have just a brief summary of each of those.
That would be helpful. And if I might add, particularly if you have, again, I just want to kind of know some numbers of maybe the need and how we've been able to, through the partnership, solve some of the needs. So, for instance, the rent-to-own piece, the home ownership pieces, do we have anything that we can promote there? And then I know that we're doing a lot of, we do a lot of things in this district, and more we're promoting those things. And as I read through this sort of list, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I have this person, this person, this person. If I share this with them, I think they might be interested in that walking school bus. They're retired, they have time. So I keep thinking about ways in which we can not only promote the specific initiative, but to recruit the more partners, not just those who can perhaps pay for something, but those who can be a part of it and help sustain that effort. So
I can share their community school plans with you, which we've tried to model like the SEP. And then the other thing I'm going to ask is that don't start asking folks to do stuff yet. Because I've been very clear with our coordinators, we want to do strong programming, and different programs are at different stages of success. And so take a look at the plans, definitely contact the coordinators. They're dynamic. You'd absolutely love having a conversation with them, and then working through them to see if there are additional places where you can help support that align with the work that they've already planned with their advisory
I think we'd
boards.
really love it if that could come to us through the central administration, because we as a board, the number of connections and contacts and community members that we can interact with is extraordinarily large over the 7 of us. And just like you want to be most effective in having volunteers, we want to be most effective with working our networks. And so when that comes to us in a centralized way, we can then really be thoughtful about who we ask for what, so that we don't accidentally ask somebody for a little thing when we really want to ask them for a big thing. So that's, we try and be strategic.
I just
about
want to
that.
acknowledge I respect that request greatly. So, and we
Because
all
they'll say
do.
yes to everything. And
I know.
No.
Thank you.
Board colleagues, if we have nothing else that's urgent, we are out of time for this item, and I'd like to move on. Thank you very much, Ms. Bisbacher and Dr. Wilson-Turner. Appreciate you very much. The next item on the agenda is the summer school for middle school, high school report.
Thank you.
And Newcomer Academy. I apologize, I didn't mean to leave you out.
So I will do brief introductions, and then I am going to turn it over to the experts for summer programs.
You need more chairs.
So Mike Lopez is up first. So we actually had 2 summer school coordinators for our Summer Start middle school program this summer. Mike Lopez is coordinator number 1, and we also had Megan D'Alessandra, who is home enjoying her newborn son. So she is not with us tonight, but she did have some input and help to develop the presentation for tonight.
Ms. McKenna, do you think it's better for us to hold questions to the end, or do you want us to ask questions of each program?
It would probably be best to
You want to do it all?
Can we hold and do can we do the first part?
Oh, well, we'll certainly do one full program, and
Right.
then the question is,
And
do you want to
then-
do all 3 and then ask 3 sets of questions, or you want to do, so each program?
Each program.
So board members, you got that? We're going to do a presentation, and then we'll ask questions about that presentation, and we'll do it 3 times.
So I'm turning it over to Mike Lopez. I'll be right back.
So we would also like to just welcome Mr. Lopez to the stage tonight. because as you know, he is newly appointed, but he served as our coordinator for summer school and did an outstanding job at the middle school level.
Thank you.
So we are ready for your presentation.
All right, good evening, everyone. Like Lori said, Megan wished she could be here, but she's got a very cute baby boy at home to take care of. So she says hi, but again, she wishes she could be here. This summer program, we had many successes. It was a great program. Both the students, the teachers, and Megan and myself and the other staff members really enjoyed it. We had a couple firsts. We really got to explore some new avenues in reaching the kids and really diving into some new techniques that really had a big impact on the staff and the students as well. Just to start with the program overview, we served about 198 students over the course of the summer. The breakdowns for each grade are up on the PowerPoint, and for each grade we had 4 STEM teachers, 4 humanity teachers, and 1 ENL teacher. And our total budget was $319,620, with our total expenditures going up to $245,374. So the strengths and challenges. Under budget, yep. One of many successes that we had. So the strengths, again, was the student engagement and the instruction. Megan and myself, one of the things we really wanted to focus on was not being in our office and being in the hallway, being in the classrooms, and really celebrating the students and the teachers as well. So with that, we saw really classrooms that were engaged. The students were really into their learning. They were up and about doing various different activities. And with that, we celebrated positive student behavior through PBIS initiatives and academic recognition through what we called On a Roll. And this is where students that were displaying positive behavior, growth mindset, and really trying and really making small successes amongst themselves, we gave each week a certain amount of certificates to the children. And as you can see up on the board, we took their pictures. And really wanted to drive home that pride in their work, with several students asking for multiple copies so that they could hand them out to different people at home, with, of course, keeping one on their fridge. And in addition to that, we also wanted to recognize the staff, because the staff we had was fantastic. So we had the Falcon Flatterer Award, which was, I wish I had brought one in, was a little stuffed animal, was a falcon. If you squeezed its belly, it made what it, I guess, sounded like a falcon. And so this was great because the Falcon Flatterer Award was given from colleague to colleague. Megan and myself started it off and with some recommendations, but after the first week, it was given from one staff member to another, and with that, as you can see Mr. Pecker up there with his award, they got to hold on to the stuffed animal for a week. And then from that next week, they got to hand it off to a new colleague. And it really built that team atmosphere, and, you know, the staff really, really loved it. And then the last thing that we had was a partnership with Little Brook Farm. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a farm located in Chatham. And what they do is they rescue horses. So this could be race horses. This could be horses left behind in a farm. They don't buy horses, they rescue them. And what they did was Lynn Cross, who's the owner of the farm, came to our school before we started our field trips out there, and she spoke with the kids about the different horses and their different stories. She had a great video that showed the horses before and after, where many times they were malnourished or they were severely beaten, and showed them what they looked like when they were brought back to health. And the kids got to interact with the different horseshoes and things like that. And the kids were just amazed about how big these horseshoes were. And so the next week we went over to the farm. Each grade we did 2 trips, so that way we could keep the group small and it could be more individualized. And the first group there, the first horse she brought out was the biggest horse, I believe, in Albany County. And it just made this big thunderous as it came out of the barn, and the entire group of students backed away and started kind of hiding. And you had students where they didn't even want to go near it. They didn't even want to be in the same area as these horses. And by the end of the day, they were hugging the horses. And they really built that comfort level with the horses. And the main goal of this was to get the kids to believe in themselves. to understand that just because they're scared of something or they're afraid of something, that they still should try it. And these kids really connected with the horses. They got to groom the horses, feed the horses, they got to lead the horses. They started off with these little pony horses, and then if the kids felt confident enough, they actually led a real size horse around. And it was just amazing to see these kids that, they even said it after where, I feel like I could try anything now. And the report we got back from the farm every day just got better and better with the kids' behavior, their performance, teachers coming back saying, I want to get this in my classroom, I want to bring this to my school. It was just a very, very positive experience. And we're also looking to possibly connect that to the local police force as well, with bringing their police horses in and making that connection there. And one other thing, with who is on a roll, I was just looking at the pictures. We also made sure to post the kids' names. That way the kids can see that constant reminder of their success moving forward. Did I skip a page? There we go. Now, some other strengths that we had. At the end of the program, we had a feedback survey conducted by both the students and the staff. So for the student feedback, some 78% felt safe in the program. 83% felt that teachers and program leaders worked hard to ensure that students are learning and are successful. And 79% felt that they understand the importance of good attendance, which we definitely wanted to drive home the whole, you got to be in school, the whole attendance. Some staff feedback, 92% felt they were a valued member of the summer program, and again, that's what we wanted them to feel, both them and the students. 81% felt that students were treated with respect, and 92% felt proud of their hard work and success. So we were very proud of the feedback we got from the teachers. Now, with those successes, we still have some areas to grow in, and some of the challenges that we got from some of the feedback was 66% of students felt that they had an adult they could talk to in the program if something was bothering them, and that was both inside and outside of school. So moving forward, we would try to tap into that, where these kids had, or these students had a spot where if they're having a tough day, tough week, tough anything, that they could go and tap into that and try to get that to be resolved or to make them feel more at ease. And staff feedback, 58% of the staff feel that the summer program is engaging for students. So while we saw students being engaged in classrooms, clearly these teachers feel like we can raise the bar even more by pushing these students to tap more into their potential and to drive more rigorous instruction within the classrooms. And the last thing that we had was student access to public transportation. At the beginning of the summer, we had the students' bus passes being linked to their school IDs. Unfortunately, there was a disconnect, so we kind of had a few troubles with the student swipers working on the CDTA buses, which we ended up resolving by having the students take the public transportation or the school buses that we had. But that seemed to be kind of a sticking point with the transportation and getting some of the kids to school. Now the metrics for the program, so pre-test to post-test academic growth, we had 96% growth in the 6th grade, 71% in 7th, and 85% in the 8th grade in math scores. We had 65% growth in 6th grade ELA, 69% in 7th, and 72% in 8th grade in ELA. For our PBS system, the following percent of students earned 80% or more of their PBIS points. And I know these are pretty high. However, that 69% was a sticking point, and that was kind of where the honeymoon phase was a little bit over. We had to move a few classrooms due to heating issues, due to some maintenance that was going on in the building. So some teachers lost that routine and that classroom procedures. So with some working with the teachers, working with the students themselves, we were able to reconfigure our routines, reconfigure the practices, and we were able to bounce back those PBIS systems. And also we saw those honor roll awards really starting to kick in as well. Now the total percentage promoted, 98.4% total, with in 6th grade 97.8, 7th 97.7, and in 8th grade 100% promoted. So that was a very good success. Thank you. And last but not least, some proposed program changes. So again, the transportation was really one of the biggest challenges we faced this summer, making sure students were getting to school. So transportation, we recommended some Tripper CDTA bus for the 7th and 8th graders. This was previously only for the sixth graders, but due to the transportation issue, we had to kind of combine everybody into the school buses. And with that, having a specific summer school ID for students, the ID that they were given was identical to their regular school year ID, so it was hard to kind of for them to tell the difference. If we had kids saying, well, I already have my ID, what do I do with this? So it was a little bit confusing. And then an additional section of 7th grade team to reduce class sizes. That was our biggest class sizes significantly, so having an additional class size would definitely help alleviate that. Thank you.
Board colleagues, we are going to have 3 opportunities to ask questions tonight. We don't all have to ask a question each time because we're definitely going to go over time if we do that. Nonetheless, if you have a question, I don't want you to feel that you are being encouraged not to ask your question. So anyone who has a question they would like to ask, Ellen, Ms. Krejci?
I was really excited when I read the original contract with the horse farm in Chatham about what that was going to be like, and I'm amazed by it. It's really the kind of field trip that does so much more than just, we have field trips that are going out to pick apples or something where they're really nice and may expose kids to something they haven't been exposed to. But this, just the way they're caring for animals that have been neglected and the way that they're facing their fears, that was mind-blowing. That was amazing. My one question I had about the survey results was I noticed that only, 59% of the staff felt the program was engaging for students. Did we actually survey the students themselves as to whether they found the program engaging?
We did. I am not sure as far as what the numbers were on that, but we could definitely get those numbers and send them out.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Lopez. I remember when you were appointed, and now I'm certain time is flying because it's already October.
Thank you.
So welcome, thank you. And those were amazing results, so congratulations to everyone.
Thank you.
I just have more of a neighborhood question. I know that we were located at M&J O'Neill, and it didn't come up as a challenge. I was just curious that I know there's a lot of activity with our neighbors and things. Did that present any issues, or obviously not because it didn't come up as a challenge, but just wanted to ask.
No, we didn't have any issues, and I think one of the reasons why is because many of our staff were staff members of Edmond O'Neill.
Okay.
Me, myself, I was an 8th grade social studies teacher there. We had several teachers that were there, as well as some security monitors. So that helped us significantly because we were able to proactively think about, with fire drills, this is what we do best. This is where we go during the school year. This is what we're going to do. So by a good number of staff already being there, that kind of helped us alleviate any problems that could have popped up.
Excellent, thank you.
Dr. Jadour.
This is more a comment. I noticed that one of the things that you achieved in your summer school was library cards for all the students. That's such a wonderful thing. And I think all students should have a library card, not just the summer school student, not just the middle school students, and especially if we can combine with the public libraries and have a mechanism where every student comes in, gets a library card. That's something the kids can use to get books during breaks, during summer, We want them to read, so.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on Ms. Krejci's question. You identified it as a challenge that the staff felt that the program wasn't engaging, but I didn't see that in a recommendation for improvement about how you were going to address that challenge.
So that's a great mention. I think moving forward, if we were going to address that, or when we address that, that would be in the area where prior to school, we have a 2-day PD, and it would be through that PD where we share best practices. And I know this year, Ms. D'Alessandro and myself, we really wanted to be in the classrooms, and we did have, to a certain level, staff collaboration. And I think moving forward, we would look to push that envelope even more so with the best practices, because we had teachers that really excelled in specific areas, and you saw that level of engagement, even though it was pretty good in most classes, that it was just excelled in those classes. So I think, we would definitely add that, because I think with that heightened engagement and with that rigor, we can see that not only in the engagement, but in the test scores as well.
Any other questions for Mr. Lopez? Thank you very much for an excellent presentation and the excellent work.
Thank you
this
very
summer.
much. Thanks,
Okay, next up is our high school team. And our high school team is Rick Shea, currently a house principal, but formerly the assistant principal who helped coordinate summer school. We have Ken Klein, Nicole Newman, and Alex Lacroix. So thank you very much for putting this presentation together, and I'm turning it over to you.
Good evening, and thank you for tonight. So we did the high school summer school program, and this program includes students residing in the city limits of Albany. It also, so mostly a lot of the, obviously high school, but then it offers the ability for students that go to a private school and live in the Albany city lines, they're allowed to come in. And so it also is a program where kids can earn back credit, or in some cases there's ways for kids to earn new credits. For our students, for 9th grade, we had 179 students. For 10th, we had 343. 11th, we had 255. For 12th, we had 46. And then students that were maybe like that cohort, or that was like 5th year, 6th year graduates, we had 12 of them. We had about 35 students, including 12 Apex teachers and 6 non-instructional staff. And then our total budget was $452,475, and in the end, we only spent $328,556. So we are very happy about that as well.
Okay, so the next slide, good evening, everyone. The next slide shows the progression of the attendance at summer school over the last 3 years. And I disaggregated, this is a little bit of that data on my own, and you'll see that while the number overall for total enrollment includes students who just took the exams, as well as students who needed coursework, as well as the exams. So if you disaggregate just those two first columns, you'll see that we're trending down when it comes to summer school. We're at 519 in 2017, 460 in 2018, and about 467 with the updated number that Mr. Shea gave me tonight. It's supposed to be 381 in that exam-only column there. So we are trending down, and as far as students who need credit to come to summer school. What you will see, though, is that we went up in exams, which correlates to our Regents exam scores that were kind of lower this year. So that's why we had more students who needed to come to summer school to take those exams. So, and the plan is around, though, I know that the high school, Ms. Comerford has charged some of us with targeting specific exams under our purview. So I'm under the algebra team, and then others are under the living environment team. So the exams that we struggled with are now being targeted with support from the admin team. That's it. And then the next slide, you'll see our numbers for grade levels, and it goes on to show you, I don't need to read it to you, you can read it for yourself, but I did want to show you that in the 9th grade, you'll see a decrease. In the 12th grade, you'll see a decrease. Again, it correlates to the work that we did last year. We targeted our 9th graders and our seniors last year with our freshman 5 work. And so now we saw that doing that was great for them, but our 10th and 11th graders kind of got a little neglected. So now we've revamped our RTI process. We have the 9th grade RTI teams that are meeting, as well as revamping the 10th through 12th RTIs to focus on those grades as well, so that we don't have that dip in those other grade levels.
All right. Ooh, that's loud. Sorry. Good evening. Some strengths and challenges. Our strengths, we had push-in services for E&L again this year, which is critical. We had pull out too. So we had like a resource room model for E&L students that could go and get help with what they needed. It was fantastic. The same thing was for special ed. We had a push-in and pull out, and those kids, the students who needed that for testing or for small group work, the students would go to that room where we had 2 special ed teachers working with them closely. It was our 2nd year at Hackett, so we had some great relationships built with Mr. Polino and the maintenance team as well. So that helped us kind of get comfortable this year and made that much more smooth. We had some continuity with administrators. So 3 of us were there last year. We had Ken there this year, so we had a full team, whereas last summer we were down an administrator, and then 1 ended up leaving towards the end of summer. So it was a 2-person team, and Nicole came on towards the end. So and we had a retention of summer school staff. So many of our summer school teachers from last year were, again, summer school staff this year. And then we had less than 5 discipline incidences this year, which is fantastic for us. And then we had the flexibility of Apex. So I'll share some of those numbers in a minute. But it just provides some opportunities for those seniors, especially, who need to get some credits in courses they've struggled in to graduate. Some challenges, just like the middle school, there was the transportation and bus passes this year. They put them on the IDs, and there was a disconnect at some point, but we fixed that towards the middle of summer. Again, it's just that moving from the high school to Hackett just provides us with some time just to kind of get that. It's always a little bit of a struggle. Hiring math teachers and then science as well, which wasn't on there, but the two of them are just the struggle with the teacher shortage. Safety concern, to and from school. We had some incidences this summer where some of our students were followed on the way to school by people in the community. Students were great and reporting it right away, and we took initiatives. We did send a letter out over the summer, and it made the news, as I'm sure you're all aware. Summer school registration, it's just that it was this year with the regions being so weird, like there was a cutoff, and it was a very small period of time between when we had graduation and when we had to enroll kids in summer, so students didn't get their failure letters until the day before registration and getting families in there. So we had to push registration 2 days into summer school to make sure we had all the students registered. And then student attendance is always a challenge, but it was a lot to do to the transportation concerns this summer. Our metrics for the program, we're happy to say we had 37 summer graduates, which is a steep improvement from previous years. We were told it was one of the highest numbers for summer school, so that was very exciting. We had 705 course pass rates, so of all the courses that were taken, we had 705 courses passed, and 293 credits were earned through the Online Learning Center / Apex. And then for Regents exam registrations, we had 1,478 students sit for exam, not individual students, but total tests taken this summer.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. So my part is short and sweet. I get to report on the staff survey. 95% of our staff reported that they were satisfied or very satisfied with their experience teaching summer school this year. And 90% reported that they were satisfied or highly satisfied with the level of support that they received from the admin team. In terms of who would come back to teach summer school again, 70% said yes, and 30% are on the fence. But nobody said no, which is nice. Okay, a couple takeouts in terms of qualitative data from the survey. One person said that he or she enjoyed working with administrators. Also, as was mentioned earlier, having the same administrators helped the success of the program. The next quote I'd like to read in its entirety. The students had respectful behavior and acted like they were happy to come to summer school. This is really significant from about 3-4 years ago. I think Albany High School should really be proud of that. I had more students that said thank you to me than I can number. These are really important skills for our youth, and that should not be taken lightly. That also is the beginning of real learning. And just for the record, I was not confused. I took a seat at the table early just to lend moral support for Mr. Lopez, who is now a member of this team.
So moving forward for next year, we'd like to continue identifying students earlier for summer school. We really did that this year within our RTI meetings. Each academy did that, and then we worked with our guidance counselors to really make sure those kids were signed up, and we worked with our homeschool coordinators to really make sure they got to registration. And so we would like to continue to do that this year. We would like to continue job sharing for staff. We did have some staff members that did job share, which really creates flexibility for them, because sometimes we do have some teachers that have to go to training due to type of courses that they're teaching in the following year, and so it really allows some flexibility. And so if you can have a social studies teacher that has to go to training and then have another social studies teacher on board, the students aren't learning that learning at any time, and so it really provides that flexibility for them, but also for our students as well. Continue to co-teach Regents level courses. We really made sure, I think we really enforced that last year, and we really made sure that happened this year as well. So we want to really make sure those classes are getting the support that they need. Again, continue to utilize APEX to offer new courses through teacher attainment. So our APEX program really provides a lot of flexibility for our students and also provides a lot of ways for kids to get course credit earned back, but also new credit. So we really want to continue to use that program and expand it. And then add another living environment teacher. A lot of our students really struggle in living environment, not only in the course, but also Regents. So we really need to, we would like to hire another living environment teacher so we could provide that extra support, even if it's just for kind of some tutoring sessions throughout the summer school hours. Like we said, that we had transportation issues, and so as much as we loved the IDs, I think just we thought summer navigator passes would maybe help for next year. We really want to implement more celebration/unique learning opportunities. I know at the high school level we'll really push it. We're really working on that PBIS, so we really want to bring that into our summer school program. So that's something we are going to work on for next year. And then if we could prefer to stay at Albany High, that would be great. But if we had to go back, we'd prefer a Hackett, just because, like we said, we do have those connections with the principal, but also all the maintenance staff. And so, and we know how to, where to put the classes, and when it comes to Regents and everything, we do need that space, and so we do know how to use that space for our Regents, and that's something we have to think about. And then also our kids know it. And then the last thing is this impact. Really, we have no impact because we were under budget, and we're hoping to be like that next year. So if you have questions, let us know.
Thank you very much for the excellent report. It was very good to hear of the good successes and increasing growth in our summer school students. It's really an exciting time to see summer school performing so well. Board members, do we have any questions for the high school team while they are here? Ms. Alexander-Mann.
The comment is, I just appreciated the way the numbers were broken down and how you could see the success of seniors and freshmen because they were targeted, and I think that was really a great way to present it and share, so thank you.
Mr. El-Manyawi.
So this transportation issue, is it the same as the middle school one? Do they coincide?
Yeah, so I think my understanding is this year we wanted to, during the school year, they're on this, yeah, I'll have transportation.
Sorry, I run transportation in the high school, so I can explain it a lot more concise. In previous years, they've given us a Navigator pass, and the kids had a 30-day summer pass. 30 days, 60 days, sorry, it was July and August. This year, we put it on the school IDs, just like they have it during the school year, but mid-summer, actually probably a week into programming, the link broke between the database and the school ID, so they weren't connecting, so they had to rebuild the database, and it was the same issue that the middle school had, from what I was told through transportation and CDT.
I see Mr. Lesko listening very carefully from his seat, so I'm sure that they will be addressing that for next year. Anybody else have a question for the high school team? I had one question, which was, how come you were so substantially under budget? We like under budget, but there's usually a reason for under budget.
I know we were looking at it a little bit more too. I know we were down a math teacher, and then I guess we were very thoughtful for the budget too when, people were asking when we did Regents review sessions and stuff like that. I mean, we did extend our APEX hours too. Even though our program ended at 12:30, we still went to 2:30. So that's something I can look more into at our budget to see, why we weren't. But I know we were down a teacher. And then I don't know if it has to do due to us having the bus passes on the IDs versus the passes, if that's something that went,
So I guess at some point, you don't have to hypothesize now, but I do think that we probably want to hear more about that, before we set the budget for next year.
I know that one of the other things that we mentioned, that Alex mentioned before, was that we determine a teacher's salary based on a 5-day work week. They only work 4 days. So I know that was a significant amount of the budget as well, some of that money.
Ms. Smith.
Just a quick question. So I understand that there are students from parochial schools, other districts. Could you tell us what the number roughly is or percentage?
I can look. I don't have it exactly on that, but I know it's maybe 20 or 30 kids. It's not a substantial number in our summer program.
Dr. Chatur.
I just want to dovetail on Vicky's question. So when you're instructing the kids who are not our public school kids, do we get reimbursed from those districts, or?
So these are not separate districts. These are students who live within the city but go to a private school. So
Okay.
they're taxpayer children,
Okay,
but
thank you.
they attend summer school.
Anyone else have a question? I just have one other quick question, which is I know we've spoken for at least a year and a half about trying to see summer school be used for kids who are trying to get extra credit to move through high school faster. And I'm wondering if we're making any progress on that thought and that idea.
So it was also, we looked at ways to increase new credit obtainment, right? So it's the same idea, and it's like you need so many seat time in there. So we thought one of the ways to do that next year is to look at, when looking through the Apex teachers, finding teachers, because usually those kids are like, they need health, and it's 3 kids. We don't want to hire a full teacher for 4 days a week when it's just 3 kids in a room. But if we can be proactive and say, we can put you in an Apex room, you're a health teacher, so you can get credit because you have a teacher teaching and can do a blended course, plus kind of throw in some other kids in that class that's doing other online learning classes. You can kill 2 birds with one stone and provide some new credit to that. So we're looking into that for next year.
And I do just want to say we did have a couple of kids, so we work with the guidance counselors, night school guidance counselors too, and in the spreadsheet that they give us, they usually say predicted to graduate in August, or if they're January 1 or June, and I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you we did have one student that probably would have definitely would have been a graduate in I want to say January, if I'm not mistaken, and she worked, due to our Apex program and the flexibility of it, she was able to earn the credits that she just needed to earn, and she got those credits and actually graduated early. So it was a really great success for her, and I know she's very happy about that, and she thanked us like every day after.
Yeah, I think both of those things are important to our vision of what summer school could be. Both kids wanting to graduate sooner, and also kids who want to take advantage of the incredible programming we have at Albany High. And there's literally not enough periods in the day for some kids, and so if they can knock out certain classes that they would otherwise take during the school year over summer school, some of them are interested enough in order to then have the room in their schedule to take whatever it is that they want to take during the school year. So. Anybody else questions for our high school team? Thank you very, very much for your report. We appreciate you being here tonight. And that brings us to the newcomer program.
So while the team is coming up, I'll introduce, we have Mr. Tom Giglio, the director, and under his leadership, we have our 2 coordinators, Christina Zantini and Matt Finn, who both coordinated the newcomer program this past summer.
Hi, how are you? So this summer we ran Newcomer Summer School, which was a K-12 program. It was open to 120 students, and the way that we opened enrollment was we looked at the breakdown of ENL students across their district. So we gave each school an allotment based on their L's, so it would be an equitable production of numbers. So once we came up with that, we gave out each school their allotment of numbers, and the teachers recommended students who had arrived within the last year. And then once that happened, we gave out applications for the families. So of the 120 students, we had 93%, we had 87 students accept. This also left open spots for students who were coming through USCRI, which we had about 20 students enroll over the summer, which allowed us to give them that welcome to school, this is how we do school. So having those open spots really gave them that opportunity to learn school. In terms of the algebra program, we adopted the ENL algebra program, which had 7 students who attended, and all 7 had actually passed the Regents, so that was awesome. So for our staff, we had 2 coordinators, Matt and myself, and we had 8 E&L teachers, 1 algebra teacher, 1 algebra co-teacher, a TA, a nurse, and 2 hall monitors. Our original budget was $69,000, and we did go over budget, and we spent about $91,000. Some of the strengths and challenges of the program, overall, we had significant student growth throughout the program. We built a lot of strong relationships with outside partners. We partnered with the Albany Public Library, Whitney Young, Seal a Smile, Honest Weight Food Co-op, Grassroot Givers, the state parks, 5 Rivers, the City of Albany, USCRI, the Round Table, New York State Museum. So we really reached out to a lot of our community partners in Albany and our surrounding areas to come into our program to offer the students some programming just to save on that budget. So instead of doing field trips out, they were able to come in. We offered the students a free book fair since most of them are not able to purchase books at the book fairs during the school year. So Grassroot Givers supplied us with enough books that the kids were able to buy about 5 books each, which was really amazing for them. We also were able to keep all of our families under the same roof. So when we were getting families over the summer, you know, it's a really hard thing for them to split up. And with our program, they were all in the same building. So it gave them that ease of, you know, my brother's right down the hall or my sister's right there. So it was amazing to see the family stay together and feel safe to learn. We also were really satisfied with how our staff came together to really educate our students. Each classroom was staffed by an E&L teacher who you know, is an expert in teaching ELs, but also trauma-informed lens, so we were able to really teach the whole child and not just the content. So some of the challenges that we faced,
So one of the big challenges that we had was the air conditioning broke at the school where we were going to be. And at the very last minute, we moved to Toast, which was a blessing because Toast is centrally located for a lot of our families, and that was great. But at the last minute, we had to call with hours and hours of added translation time. We had to call all the families to make sure that they knew where to go and where school was going to be. During the summer, we were negotiating a contract with our in-person translators, the actual human beings who come, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So we were not able to access those in-person translators. We were just using language lines. That adds lots and lots of person hours of getting things done. We also ran into some of the same ID issues that you've heard about previously with the other programs, with the student busing. And I would add for us, with the new students coming in, they wouldn't even have a school ID to add the busing to in the first place. So we really needed to have those navigator cards and just kind of get them rolling, so to speak. No pun intended. So, and then we are really hoping, this is kind of going toward the future, but we didn't have any dedicated specials teachers for a K through 12 program, and that was a challenge for us in terms of getting the kids doing things and doing things physically in space, which is actually a language learning technique that's super important. So the teachers did the best they could, but I think with specials teachers, like gym teachers and art teachers on site, we could have done even more of that work.
So I just want to talk about the successes of our program. Overall, we assessed our students in multiple different ways. The first thing that we did was a newcomer checklist. And what a newcomer checklist is it's basically life skills that we want our students to obtain. And so what we did with our staff is Matt and I had brought a bunch of newcomer checklists that have been used, Fordham University and other school districts, and we laid it out for them, and they, as a staff, picked the most important things that they felt that we should be assessing our kids on. For example, some of the things are able to ask students to go to the bathroom, able to greet their teachers, able to respond to basic questions, will understand rules at school. So these things, are some things that sometimes we assume that our students know, and we really have to take a step back and think about what we need to teach our students. So PBIS was a huge help with that, because we were able to explicitly teach all of our students the expectations of school in all of the different settings, and then really see them flourish as they were able to practice them in the actual settings. So of that newcomer checklist, we saw a 276% average growth from the beginning of summer to the end of summer, which was really amazing to see, especially since our kids were coming in continuously over the program. Another thing that we did was we worked closely with technology to set up in school tools where we have all the student data, a summer 1 and summer 2 data points for the Laurie Strong assessment. And the reason that we don't have all of the data broken down here is the Laurie Strong has a lot of different categories, so we didn't want to overwhelm you. But what we thought would be great is, these kids are coming to the country and they're going to school in September, and this was a great opportunity to give their incoming teachers just a little bit about what they know, and they can also see their growth over the summer. So for the students who've been here for a year, it's also an opportunity to continue those data points over the summer. So now when their future teachers go in, or their teachers now go in, they'll be able to see if they were here last spring, their spring score, summer 1, summer 2, and now they'll be putting in their fall score. We also did a parent survey of their satisfaction of the program, and we had an 85% satisfactory rating. And what we did is we did the translation to the best of our abilities, as we didn't have that service. And so we were able to get about 18 surveys from the parents, which was great. And in terms of attendance, we had 93% attendance from our K-12 kids and 98% attendance for our algebra program.
So recommendations for next year. We certainly recommend continuing and expanding this program, and adding extra support. One of the extra supports that we'd like to see is a social worker, a psychiatrist, school psychiatrist, maybe even having full-time homeschool coordinator would be wonderful for the program. And we'd like to have special teachers. We're interested in having the kids have access to an art teacher, a music teacher, and a gym teacher in the future. And now that we do have our in-person translation service, I know that when we did this program in 2017, those in-person translators were just wonderful additions to what we could provide for the kids and for the families. And we'd love to see them come back in the future. We'd also like to make sure that we're even more aligned and coordinated with all the other summer programs in terms of both hiring staff and making sure that a program hasn't decided they're going to take a student when we thought we were going to have a student. Things like this, little bitchy things like that happen and that make it hard to pin down what's happening at the beginning of the program. We would love to see this school, Toast, be the location every year. I think the families were really thrilled because it's right in the middle of everything. It was very easy for them to get the kids here. Again, with the CDTA swipers, it would be better for our kids, especially because some are just getting here, to have a CDTA swiper rather than have things linked to a student ID.
So the last thing I want to talk about is the impact on the budget. As you saw, we went over budget, and there's a couple of reasons why. Our original budget was $60,000, and in that budget, we had not accounted for the algebra program. We took that on last minute. So that was requiring us to hire 2 new teachers. And also we wanted to make sure that we, had a nurse on staff, so that was also in the secondary budget. So in the future, what we would hope is that for next year, we would get a social worker, some support staff, and special area teachers, and hope that we would get an additional budget of about $60,000.
Good evening. I just wanted to personally thank Teresa and her staff for being so accommodating at the last minute once the AC at AIC went on the brink about 5 days before we were supposed to start school, and we had to figure out how we're going to move 120 kids over here. They were extremely welcoming, and it just turned out to be a great experience. I think, secondly, I'd also like to thank our friends at the middle school and secondary high school summer programs for really coordinating not only Regents logistics with Christina and Matt, but also some of those nuances. You heard Christina talk about trying to keep families together and all that coordinating with all the different languages going in and out. So I thought that from my perspective this summer, I think it really was the most seamless coalition of all the programs coming together. And then third and finally, I did just want to publicly thank Matthew and Christina for their leadership, as it was an adventurous summer, but it certainly was a great first school experience for many of our newcomers, as we had even 20 kids throughout the summer itself enroll. And I also am hoping that we can continue to build off the academic integrity, not just the social emotional power of the program as in years past, but now that we're moving towards measuring the academic strengths of the kids, and even, as Christina mentioned, getting them ready for this fall so they could really be catapulted into the school year. I think it's the direction that we really want to go. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. We know this has been a very successful program off and on for the last couple of years, so we're happy to see it back and doing very well again. Board colleagues, who has a question? Dr. Chatur.
So the program was budgeted for 120 students, and you got about 75%, 90-some students attend the program. The instructional salaries went from like 21,000 to 39,000, it's almost doubled. You attribute some of that to taking on algebra, but there were only 7 students who were taking algebra. So I'm trying to understand, why was this disconnect?
Sure. So we had to hire the 2 full-time teachers because we needed an E&L teacher to co-teach that algebra class. So regardless of how many kids, we still had to have the 2 full-time teachers. And then we also had to have some additional staffing. Nursing and security, I believe, had to be rolled over, especially with the transition, which wasn't budgeted for, that last-minute move from AIC over to Toast. And then in addition to just some of the additional staffing FTEs that had to happen, there was extra hours that had to be put in to run the food, to run the transportation, and some of the other logistical things in that sense.
Did you want to follow up? Yeah.
The travel and conference budgets also doubled. It went from 4,900 to over 8,000.
So when we originally got our budget, we did not have any field trip money. So Matt and I had advocated, after looking at the budgets of other programs, that we felt that for our students it was more equitable for, if all the other programs had field trip money, that we also receive field trip money. And so therefore Tom was generous enough to help us, advocate for getting that for our students, because that was not originally in the budget for us. So the travel and conference also accommodates for the transportation. So the $2,400 is the CDTA budget, and CDTA, and the $1,000 is for the first student. So because our program is K-12, we needed first student transportation as well as CDTA budget.
Thank you.
I just want to ask one follow-up question about the money, and I don't necessarily, I guess I want to do all the money questions now, and then we can ask other questions. The program is quite a bit longer in the day. It's a longer day than the other programs, because I did the same math I think that Dr. Tutor was doing, which is that the program on a per student basis was considerably more expensive than the other two programs, like at least double, sometimes triple, once we build in the additional funds that you're looking for. And it's not that we're resistant, it's that we're trying to understand how they fit together. And part of, I think, what's driving that per student cost is that it's a full day program, whereas the other programs are really only like a 3-hour kind of or 3.5-hour thing. So I think that's something for us to keep in mind. But I'm also interested in knowing if there's additional students we can serve without additional staff. If we're going to hire the additional staff that you described of a social worker and specials, are there more students that we can serve so that the per student cost comes down a little? Do you understand what my question is, rather than serving only whatever your minimum, whatever you had this year? Is there more students that need that service?
I think also something, as Matt had discussed before, is a challenge that we faced was that some of our kids that we had, because our program was so special and that we were really targeting such a specific group of students, that once we sent out the recommendations to the schools with those 120 students, some of those students had already been recommended and enrolled in the other summer school programs, elementary and high school, and therefore some of them, one for high school, felt like they needed to go to the high school one because they could get different courses, and the elementary they weren't, for the parents weren't sure, because AIC was so far, because that's originally where it was supposed to be. They wanted a school that they were familiar with. So, I think that coordination for in the future, because at that point when we started reaching out to families, the applications for the elementary programs had already gone out to families and been returned.
And I think also, just to follow up, I've already had some brief conversations with Dr. Wilson Turner around having like a mid-January meeting where we can all get together, each program leader, and really talk about, the hiring process, how we're recruiting students, how we can really maximize economy of scale, so to speak, so that we're getting the most bang for our buck with not compromising what that impact on student achievement would be.
Any other questions about the money aspects of this? Okay, any other questions of any kind? Ms. Krejci.
Thank you so much. It's always exciting to hear what we're doing for our newcomers. I just had a quick question, and it was about the metrics. Is this the first year that we had really done academic metrics for the program?
Absolutely, in terms of the depth and breadth of the Lori Strong assessment with all the different phonemic measurements that are there. We had in previous years tried to do a pre-test and a post-test, but that data was really hard to extrapolate because it's such a short window in that sense. So I think the mindset of mapping where kids are more in depth and coordinating with their new school in September has really been a really great way to go about it.
That makes sense. How do our attendance, assuming that we did attendance and parent surveys in previous years, how do our attendance and parent satisfaction metrics look compared to previous years?
5 to 10% up in general terms. We always did well with attendance in a sense. I just want to again shout out 7 out of 7 kids passing the algebra is really just amazing work, and that's a lot of detailed work there. So we absolutely, I don't know if we really crossed the 50% threshold in years past. And then I think we have consistently done a good job with getting feedback from our parents in terms of their satisfaction of the program.
Is that a question? Mr. Amanyawi.
Thank you very much. I'm really impressed by the results. I have a question about the translation services. You guys were using Language Lines, which is an electronic translation service now, and you guys mentioned that it would be beneficial to have on-site, real-life translators. Can you explain that
Sure.
to me?
We currently do have both. We have two companies that we contract with. Language Lines is an on-demand telephonic service that we have where you don't have to schedule. They have access to all of our languages that we have, and we piloted it last spring, and we just adopted it, and it's been going great. We did have that over the summer. We did have a small gap in the summer during negotiations with the in-person company, All Language Translations. I'm happy to say that that was resolved and adopted by the board, so we have both now. And so having both will, obviously, when you have a summer program of newcomers, sometimes having access to a phone doesn't really help a kid find out like where their classroom is or communicate a need that they have. And typically we always have in-person interpreters there. It was just an unfortunate gap in basically the extended negotiations with that company that caused that.
Do you feel like it was necessary to have both? I mean, would it be better to just have one?
Yes, it's absolutely beneficial to have both because they both can serve different needs for us and impact. First of all, meeting the needs of families. With CR 154, we have to make sure that we're communicating in the language of preference, both in written and oral and in person, but also in terms of being fiscally responsible to our community. We're able to just streamline with Language Lines the exact minute that you need that interpretation versus sometimes there's more sensitive things that maybe you just would rather have an in-person interpreter there, or like what the Albany International Center does each fall for the first 2 weeks is they have, you know, a team of interpreters there in the hallways and in the classrooms helping the kids find their way. So they both meet different needs for us, and I would say we definitely need both. Well, we'll just hold on for a second.
Board colleagues, barring any urgent questions, we did not allot enough time on the agenda for this. This was the error on the part of the agenda setting committee, but so we are well over time on this particular item, although we are still ahead of schedule barely on the agenda overall. But if there's something urgent else that you want to ask, please go ahead. Otherwise, we'll let these fine people go home. Thank you very much for your excellent work. Okay, the next topic is Dreambox and Lexia, the elementary computer-based instruction.
Good evening, board members, and at this time, I just wanted to say this was an item that we did add because we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the specific programming that we are looking at, because we are trying to develop consistency with regard to the data that we are receiving with regard to our students. We look at differentiated instruction, look at making our instructional practices consistent across the board so that we can make informed decisions about the materials that we're using. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Mrs. Bechtel.
Good evening, Board of Education. I will introduce these fine folks, and they will carry on with their presentation. Tonight we have with us Sarah McGraw, who's the elementary STEM supervisor. We have Lynn Strang, our elementary humanities supervisor, and Chris Finn, a new position in our department. He's the elementary curriculum resource coordinator. So let me pass the mic over to these folks, and we'll get going.
Good evening. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about the two platforms that we're currently utilizing in the K-5, K-6 elementary world. Before we start, we wanted to talk a little bit of a history, just to give you some context. Ever since Apple IIes rolled into the classroom 20 who knows how long ago, we have had computers in the classrooms. And with that, there was never any standardized software or web-based resources that were required of teachers. It was very much the Wild West. People found different things, different buildings bought things, PTAs bought things for buildings. Teachers would go to a conference and find some new platform and say, this is wonderful. And so what we started to realize about 3 years ago is that we really needed to sort of pull the reins in and centralize what's being used. Are these really quality, or is it just we've always used it. So I know when I came in the math world, there was 5 different platforms being utilized in different elementary buildings. And Lynn found the same thing with ELA. And so in 2016, there was a focused effort to try to figure out who was using what. There was over 35 different web-based platforms being utilized in elementary classrooms in one way or another. And these are the ones we knew about. These aren't the ones that maybe a teacher just loaded up because you could get a free system. So with that said, we started to think about what is really the best quality out there. What platforms would meet our needs? And that's where ELA Lexia came in and Dreambox for Math came in. Currently, just as a side note, as we moved before to the next slide, our primary resources, Envision for Math and Wonders for ELA, have web-based platforms as well. Our new FOSS Science series has web-based applications as well. Some of them are used solely by the teacher, but example for FOSS in the fourth and fifth grade, there's an online component that students can go on and hear the story read to them in Spanish and do some application labs. So web-based resources besides these two are also being utilized in elementary classrooms. But these are supplemental. These are a supplemental resource. And so if we're looking at the primary purpose and the usage expectations, what we were talking about there is that what we're looking for is to replace some of the work that was happening when teachers are pulling small group, when teachers are working with RTI. They're taking 6, 8 children with them to a table. What are the other children doing? And there's centers happening, there's different activities are occurring, but then there was also, let's just be very frank, packets and things that maybe were not as engaging, things that were not as on level and as diversified as we'd want. Children were spending minutes keeping busy while the teacher was taking a different group. And so as we started to look at that, that is what these platforms are talking about. We are not ever referring to replacing direct instruction with these platforms. These are the platforms that children might work on for a few minutes a day while the teacher is taking a different group of children. And then they rotate to another table or another group. So if you look at the usage minutes, we're talking about in a week's period of time, roughly 90 minutes weekly, about 45 minutes for Lexia, about 45 minutes for Dreambox. These are not mandatory in the fact that they are sacrosanct. What we're talking about here is this is what we want you using these platforms before you wander off and use something else that you might have. We want that these are the platforms, not Prodigy for math, which was widespread before I came in. Prodigy is skill-based. This is an instructional platform. It is substantially better. And so these are part of why we were looking at these usage minutes. We also know that these aren't feasible in every location because we have equity issues in regard to Chrome carts. So every building is not necessarily going to, in every classroom, get to those criteria of 45 minutes, but that was a range of what we were looking for and what we were looking to have. You'll notice also in the usage setting, we're talking about small group. Specifically, like for example, I'll speak to the Dreambox and Lynn's going to speak about Lexi in a moment here. In the Dreambox piece, during Math RTI, which the purpose of that 30 minutes a day is to fill in unfinished learning, to take small groups of children, very specialized, and where a skill or there's an area of unfinished learning and have that teacher teach into that. Well, what are the other 18 children doing at that time? What we want the other 18 children to do at that time is to work on stuff that is specific to their areas where they need to work. What standards are they still building? What prerequisite skills do they not have? Working in Dreambox allows each child to have essentially an individual tutor sitting next to them because the platform is set up in that manner to move through. So these are not additional instructional minutes. They're the embedded minutes inside the math minutes that are already there. So it's not an additional 50 hours a year. It's part of the math program. It's part of the ELA program. It's a small group activity. With that said, we wanted to take a quick look at the next slide, which talks about how do we decide on Lexi and Dreambox. We didn't jump in and just say, oh, we went to a conference and this was great, or one person told us these were wonderful. We piloted, and we piloted for a lengthy period of time in different groups. You'll notice we piloted in the after-school tutoring program across the district. And that happened in all 12 elementary schools for Lexia and for Dreambox. Dreambox, we piloted full scale at Sheridan Prep last year. Every classroom worked on it, used it during RTI time. Lexia was piloted with special ed students and had been being utilized in self-contained special ed classes for the last 2 years, and DCS's 3 through 5 used Lexia last year as a pilot. And then elementary summer school started utilizing both of these programs over the summertime. Before Lexia last 2 years, Dreambox this past year. So the beautiful part about these sort of piloted is our implementation process has been seamless, because there are all these teachers who taught summer school, who taught in after school, who worked in different programs. So it wasn't extremely difficult to get these up and running. And that's part of who Chris Finn is. Chris works with both Lynn and I, and he has been providing professional development with the teachers, making sure every student is in and into the system so that they can get on. And then his role is also to roll back in when some data is in these platforms to ensure that the teachers can pull the reports out that show where children are to add and supplement. So the implementation and the piloting allowed us to say these are the two programs that bubble up, that work really well. I'm going to stop talking for a minute. I'm going to pass this over to Chris, and I'll come back for some math later.
Good evening, and thank you. I just want to speak to the next slide, platform access. As one of my duties as the elementary curriculum resource coordinator is to provide admin support for these accounts and these platforms. So we're using Clever, which is something that was implemented by the technology department last year as a single sign-on. This helps secure the students' information and also streamline the login process. I know in previous years, teachers have all kinds of solutions for keeping track of, the 7 or 8 different usernames that the students and passwords that the students have for different platforms. And this streamlines it to all the student needs to know is the initial login for their, to get on the district network. Once they have that, they can access all these platforms through that, and teachers as well, which makes it extremely helpful for getting teachers and students using these platforms in a really dedicated way. It also ensures, or helps to ensure, a more secure access, because in order for, say, one student to use another student's account, they don't just need to know, they need to know the other student's ID number and their credentials for logging into the district network, which also carries with it a code of conduct questions, as opposed to perhaps, oh, I saw, that person's credentials on, the wall of the classroom and got in there and started, playing around. So it creates these levels of security. And also, as you see from the slide, there's an element of compliance with state and federal regulations regarding students' privacy and security of data that these platforms provide, that when we were having these different platforms coming in from all over the place that teachers were implementing, we don't know what those, what compliance those platforms had. So that was also part of the reason that we were looking at these specifically. I'll pass the mic over to Lynn. She can talk about Lexia.
Good evening. I'd like to talk about how we ended up with Lexia. Originally, we were using iRead, a different program, and iRead was being utilized in the district for the last 3 years, which is a K-2 program. And it is a program that addresses foundational skills that are necessary to be a fluent reader at grade level. Our goal is to have all students, as you're aware, we have a K-2 literacy initiative with the hope that children will enter grade 3 reading at grade level. But what we found was that we still had a major problem with the intermediate grades of students still having unfinished learning. So the reason why we moved, it was twofold really. Lexia was developmentally appropriate for K2 and not necessarily for our 3, 4, 5 population. Or, yeah, the iRead was not appropriate for the 3, 4, 5 population. And because we were already using that program in summer school and in the after-school program, teachers voiced a sentiment that stated they preferred the K-5 platform, which really is a K-12 platform because this license allows students to level up for also our higher achieving students with Power Up, which still would be linked to our Clever. We would just have to let Mr. Finn know that we need to connect to the next program in the event that we have higher achieving students. But the whole idea is this is for small group. Within the ELA program, there is 1 hour of their core instruction where the classroom teacher, in addition, the reading teacher is pulling small groups. And then the child has the opportunity to engage in differentiated center activities. Having the Lexia program allows for students to get that, like Sarah had indicated, that tutoring one-on-one based on what that child needs. And really, it is a program that allows choice within the program. There's phonemic awareness, there's phonics, there's the vocabulary component, the comprehension, the structural analysis, and fluency. All of these things equal reading at grade level. If there's a deficit in any one of those areas, it makes it challenging for the student to tackle complex grade level texts. And that is our goal, to have all children be successful in the area of reading, because we know reading is the gateway to success in all subject areas. And I think we talked enough about Lexia.
So I'm back with Dreambox. So I did not have my coat off in this job before I had teachers and coaches come talk to me about Dreambox. They came right at me saying, yes, there's IXL, yes, there's Khan Academy, yes, there's Prodigy, yes, there's these other little rogue-free websites that people were using for math. And then they said, and then there's Dreambox, and they played it like it was lobster on the table. And so I said, well, let's take a look at it, and what are we doing? We're not just jumping in and purchasing a platform. Teachers are comfortable with some of these other platforms. People are enjoying some of these other platforms. We're not going to say you have to now shift over here. SPA last year sat in on our conversation with the sales rep and decided that they wanted to try to do it full building. Their results and their experience implementing it in RTI worked extremely well. So math has 60 minutes of core instruction, right? And during that time, there's usually the teacher is teaching something, then the children are going out and working on application problems. Where we're looking to use Dreambox is in RTI math. Okay, that's 30 minutes a day. That's when the teacher's pulling that little group and the other 18 are sitting out there. And so in an ideal world, they're out there, they're working. They may have a center of activities that they can do, math games, other activities that would build a standard, build a skill set. But then they also, maybe another little group of 8 working on Dreambox, and then rotate them. That's the ideal goal of what we're looking to do with Dreambox. Dreambox, and Chris can provide for any of you, if you want to kind of see more what the children see, Chris can set you up with access to Lexia or Dreambox to get in there. Dreambox is, you have an avatar. You all know what those are, right? They have a little avatar, and it goes through these sort of different things. It has a similar piece to Lexia where there's choice. So when the child gets bored in this one area of math standard work, they can try something else. And so all of these things were enticing to me when the math coaches told me about the avatar and about this and about that, and I'm like, uh-huh. And then what really sold me was Dreambox is fully aligned with our primary resources. It's fully aligned with Envision, which is our primary resource. It's fully aligned with Context for Learning, our supplemental math resource. It was like Dreambox was made for us. We bought those two resources, and then here's Dreambox. And Dreambox is now aligned with NWEA, another one of our data things. So you can see the RIT band in NWEA, and you can plug in lessons into Dreambox. The teacher can, and that's part of Chris's role to help teachers do that. So you just taught a standard in the classroom, and your time to move on to a new standard or a new unit, but this little group of 7 kids maybe didn't quite fully grasp it. You can load lessons into Dreambox that practice that standard that you've moved on to a new one. If they don't need to load anything in, it just keeps moving along itself. It's a teaching platform, not a skills practice platform. The children are not supposed to do all their work over here on a scratch and type in 17 as the answer. They're actually supposed to do the work on the platform because the algorithm in the platform figures out where they went off the path and then gives them more examples to put them back on the path by watching what they did, where they clicked, where they moved, etc. The other amazing part about Dreambox, as far as I'm concerned in regard to this particular platform, is that it talks, there's no test, it just keeps modifying itself, it goes up and down, but it uses the similar strategies that we're using in Envision. So I know one of the things, I have parents who call me and they say, I can't help my kids with math because I don't know that new way you're all showing them how to do math. And my comment to them is, well, it's a new strategy, 10 frames, for example. Like, this is a new strategy. Well, Dreambox uses the strategies that we're showing them in the classroom in the Envision resource. So there's a million different strategies to show certain things. They use the same ones we're using with our resources. It's also aligned with the Engage New York modules. So with that said, this is why we moved to these platforms. These are not, again, not replacing direct teacher instruction, not to be used during core instructional time. These are supplemental platforms to be utilized as one station, so to speak, in the Enhance the Learning, but they are differentiated based on the individual student's needs, and they move and modify themselves with the student. Questions? We're at the question time, I think. We can take a peek, but we don't need to. That's something that Chris can set you up for. We don't want to take that
board
time.
colleagues, what do you want to do about actually seeing the product online right now? It's 9:05. If we use time to do that now, we won't, we'll eat our time. So can we do that independently? Would people prefer that? Okay. So we would like to have that opportunity to do that under however that works. We just don't want to use our board meeting time to do it. So Mr. Finn, this is Ms. Bowie. Ms. Bowie, this is Mr. Finn. You guys can get to know each other and figure out how we'll figure that out, okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So as always, we are going to do one question at a time. Order your questions in your mind, which is the most important, because you might only get just one. But wait, the superintendent would like to speak since she gets first dibs.
So thank you all very much. Great presentation, and I'll just say that from me because I think it is worth it for us to make sure the board has a full presentation with regard to the requirements that we are making of our teachers, because as a district, we do make those decisions with regard to curriculum and the resources that we are using. We do it in a very collaborative way, but it is the district's responsibility to ensure that the resources that are used in our classrooms with our instructors align with the standards and meet the needs based on the data that we have from our students. So with that, I will say that when the link is available, if you will please ensure via that, if it goes to Ms. Bechtel, that it comes to me so that we don't have 7 random emails going, that if you'll send that to me, then I will make sure to coordinate that to the board. So thank you very much.
All right, who would like to ask the first question? Why don't we start with Ms. Krejci? We'll go like left to right.
This is a little bit of a multi-part question, but I'll try to make it as sensible as possible. I've heard in this presentation the word requirement, but then I've heard it's unclear to me whether you're saying Lexia and Dreambox are required for each elementary school teacher to use or required for each elementary school student to use the program, or whether it's simply these are the ELA and mathematic softwares that you are required to use if you're going to use one of these computer-aided instruction things. The next question I had was, we're talking about 45 minutes instruction a week for both Dreambox and Lexia, and I wondered where we got those numbers from. Was that from the software companies or from somewhere else?
So I will take the first part. Yes, it is required that they use it, so I will say that. Yes, it is. However, it is still a part of the differentiated instruction. So if you were in an elementary classroom, it is no different than if I am the teacher and I have gone out and randomly purchased something in the past, and I have it on the computers, and I am saying to the students, this is what you are doing. It is no different than that, other than we have taken it to the level of being a district resource. It is part of the centers that they are doing. The recommendation from the company itself is that time frame. However, we have tested that with our own students, plus there's other data, not just from the company, but from other resources as to how it's been effective in other districts being used. And so that has led us to that decision. And you heard how many areas we tried and piloted the program to have the data to say, this is the resource that aligns with what we are already using. So I'm not objecting to saying that it is required, but it is still part of the differentiated instruction and the centers that they are engaging in, so that we now have consistent data, K-5, with one of our centers that students are using. And so we are providing that professional development for teachers, so that it's just like we require the use of Wonders, we require the use of Envisions. It is that.
And the minutes really, it's the flexibility because of the different schools' access to technology. We can't say, some buildings have a lot more Chrome carts than other buildings. Some buildings have a really easy system in the classroom. So the flexibility of the minutes is not the flexibility, it's how those minutes look. We're just saying, we have no expectation that a child would be sitting on there extended periods of time. The companies themselves say it's kind of like brushing your teeth every day, a little bit of minutes a day. It builds those skills and it builds those things up, not sitting there for periods.
I'd like to add, the other piece is that there is a monitoring component where we know how much time a student is spending with the resource, with the tool. If there is an exorbitant amount, absolutely that would be addressed, that will be reviewed. If we're seeing that, let's say that Coweta doesn't need as much time in this particular center, just as if you were in any other center, there is where that flexibility exists.
Can I ask just a follow-up, and then we...
Follow-up first, because that was what I was getting at, because I noticed that Lexia's website says the recommended weekly usage target for each student varies from 20 to 80 minutes a week, depending on what level they're testing at, and so that's why I was wondering why we seem to have more what's one size fits all in the middle. Yeah.
Ms. Strang, we usually
I'm
put
so
it in
sorry. It could be up to 80 minutes in the event that a child is falling behind. So that would be maybe like a tier 3 type student that really needs, a more one-on-one type intervention. And how we are addressing a student that has a deficit like that is there is a reading teacher that pulls out that small group of population to specifically address those skills. So that 80 minutes would be combined probably with the teacher support time as well as the Lexia time.
So if folks don't mind, I want to ask my follow-up on this because it's about this very specific thing about the minutes and the mandate and all of that. We're in week 5 of school or something, and so the superintendent has said we have the opportunity to evaluate how many minutes kids are actually being on the program. I'm interested about that, and I'm also interested about the way it's being described as one of centers versus the expectation that all the children in the room would be doing the same thing, working on Dreambox. And I'm curious to know whether we can monitor that as well, because certainly anecdotally what I'm hearing is that teachers are using that time not always to give small instruction. Of course, we only hear things anecdotally. We rely on you guys to look at the big picture, but they're not always using it to create additional one-on-one instruction time. Sometimes they're using it to create an additional 15 minutes of time in their day to do whatever it is that they also need to do, which I'm not saying they don't need to do. I'm just saying that that's not what you're describing. You're describing it as one center, and what I'm hearing anecdotally is 20 kids on Chromebooks. And so I'm asking you, the question is, are you already monitoring how many minutes students are spending on average per week by class, individual classrooms? So you're looking at individual schools, individual teachers to look for anomalous teachers. And in that, can you look for this scenario I'm describing where you've got 20 kids on a Chromebook at the same time for a few, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, where it's not what you think is happening, which is very admirable, right? We all want more time for teachers to work individually with teachers. And I don't believe we have not spoken about this. We try not to speak about board business off the microphones, but in general, my sense is that nobody's got any concern about teachers having the opportunity to use technology to create that one-on-one instruction time. The question is, if it's 20 kids looking at a monitor while the teacher is prepping her lesson for next week, that's a very different use of technology, and we're curious to know, are we actually evaluating what's happening?
So just before I'm going to just kind of interject. I'm going to say yes, we do have the capability of doing that, but I would be careful that we are in the beginning stages, because what I can see and what I've known to happen when you're implementing something, yes, all 25 students might be on there as a demonstration to assist students with logging on, with how to access. As you are getting them acclimated, it may be anecdotally that we are hearing, oh, all of the kids were on the computer at the same time. But my questions would be more about what was the purpose of that. If it were used in that case, then we would need to be able to provide that explanation. If it were not, we'd need to be able to provide that explanation and then work alongside our teachers and coaches to make sure that the latter is not the case. So now I'll turn that back over.
So one of the elements of this platform management part of my job description is that there would be regular usage reports being sent to Sarah and Lynn primarily, and then also if there's concerns, like we see patterns, we can see usage down to individual students on all these platforms. So then it would be possible to look for patterns. And if you see, for example, a class of students, they're all at exactly the same amount of usage or nearly, so that could indicate that they're all being put on at the same time, as opposed to in a center environment where maybe one group gets 10 minutes and then the other group gets 9 minutes, and then this other group the next day gets 12 minutes, because it's in the flow of a center kind of learning environment. So that's a pattern that I can look for as I'm looking at usage data that would indicate how the program is actually being used in the classroom.
Does anybody have additional questions that are on this, like how is it done, mandate, number of minutes, like this particular little piece of it? Because I kind of want to get that tied up, and then we can move on.
The other thing I guess I would just say,
sorry, Ms. McGraw.
I just wanted to throw something out right now. If someone's strolling through a building right now and sees an entire class of children on a laptop right now, they could very well be taking the NWEA assessment. The NWEA assessment is happening in all our buildings, and they're on Chrome cards. And they're happening in classrooms. So you could stroll by and be like, they're all on there for an hour. I walked by, I walked back. So sometimes things like that are occurring, that there are assessments happening on the thing. But I'll just speak to FOSS. You could go into a 4th grade classroom and see the entire class on a Chrome card in the science class during the class, because there's an online story about, whomever they're studying about, and they're listening to it with their headphones and they're reading it, and that's what's happening for that 7 minutes. Like, there's no online piece that's longer than, I think, 9 minutes in the FOSS, but you could visually see something like that. But that's absolutely not our expectation, and we have been crystal clear in our, Chris does all the PD, but so does Lynn and I, in regard to meeting in small groups of teachers and in large groups, that this is an expectation of a small group center, period.
Ms. Smith.
I do want to clarify as well, because our other platform, iRead, did not have this capability of time stamping when students are on. We can see exactly, like if it's the whole class, if they're doing an RTI, we have that capability of monitoring when they're on and when they're off
Ms. Smith.
the platform.
So I think what I'm trying to figure out is, so I have not had any calls or emails or anything from parents expressing some concern about, oh, my kid is spending way too much screen time. You know, I'm not getting any of that, but I think my colleagues are. So I'm just trying to understand, one, do you feel that our teachers have this down? You know, are they describing what's happening in the same way that you are tonight? And to parents, to students. So that's all I'm really trying to figure out is where are the different perceptions coming from? How are we then handling those questions?
I can say that, no. As many people as there are sitting in this room, that's how many interpretations we can have. Has it been communicated to them? Absolutely. But it's just like anything that until you get used to it and you're comfortable with it, then your interpretation and your explanation may not be that where we would expect it to be. And so I can answer that in one word, no, because that is not anything that at this juncture, I would think that 100% of our elementary teachers engaging in this would be well-versed enough to be able to express that. You have to remember, it started with K2. Our 3-5 teachers are just now rolling into it. Are we working to get there? Absolutely. Sure. Will that language be emphasized at this level and then with the coaches that are working with teachers, and as they get more comfortable with what that expectation is, do we anticipate that that language would change? Absolutely. Right. But at this juncture, I think that as a district, as a system, we have to be very careful that number one, we're committed and focused to what the true intent is, and that we are following through with that expectation. Right. And then the follow-up to that is ensuring that we have the data to support what the expectation is, so that if that expectation is not being met, we have the tools to address that. We have to be very careful also with the one-off anecdotes and explanations, and even within our system. I know that, and this is kind of a roundabout way to explain it, but I know that there are times when I get questions and my response is one sentence because I cut to the chase sometimes, but then also there's another way of explaining it that satisfies more people because they may have a more detailed explanation. It's not wrong, it's just a different way of communicating that. My one-liner probably could have been better. And sometimes I think that's what we get to where we are right now.
So I appreciate that, and I think what I sort of knew that of your response, but I also want to say that then that says to me that I want us to have some patience, and I really, the presentation tonight was very, very helpful, and I think moves my own, sort of thinking, and I did go online and I signed up, to experiment with this. Still want to get your link because I have a feeling it's probably something different. I want to experience it the way you're saying our students would experience. So I just want to urge for myself and for the rest of us to have some patience and to let's see how this goes. The data will tell us a lot, but your presentation tonight and the explanations for me were very helpful and satisfied some of the things that I was hearing from others, not directly, so I want to thank you for that.
I do also just want to share that I think one of the pieces as we're starting, in speaking to what the superintendent was saying is that Mrs. Brown was talking about walkthroughs, right, in her original thing, and that that is a drive with our administrators this year to get in classrooms regularly. Lynn and I, our goal too, is when we go into these classrooms, we're looking for those platforms and how are they being utilized. And with Chris's support, he's being able to say to us, you know, Mrs. So-and-so in this building seems to have no usage or seems to have a higher end usage. Can we find out what's going on there? And so we're really working collaboratively when we go into these buildings, making sure we're going in at RTI time, making sure we're going in at guided reading time, where these centers are happening, where these platforms are happening, to actually see what's happening.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, and I also appreciate our colleague, Ms. Smith's question, because it's similar to mine, but mine's a tad bit different in that what was clear to me in this presentation was the why. It became abundantly clear. Similarly to when Girl Scouts are selling cookies, we know why they're going about it. So everything was made abundantly clear that it's aligned and that there's data driven and that there's these outputs and everything, and that's excellent. I think where the philosophical divide comes in is for people understand there's a lot of different waves in the media. So people are thinking about screen time and their desire to reduce screen time and things of that nature, and thus seeing on paper or hearing word of mouth 45 minutes, their perception is, there's even studies about even with the optics, with your eyes and things of that nature, just looking at screens for an extended period of time. What became abundantly clear is that you're not you're not replacing anything, it's a supplement, so that's greatly appreciated. And I think one thing that the superintendent explains better is pedagogy, for example. We know that, for example, Pluto was demoted at one time, and now there's like talk that it's going to be promoted. So understanding like the philosophical shifts of people and their understanding of why we're doing what in the classroom and why we're shifting this way, I think is just to grow with our community in that sense. And not necessarily just only partner with them, but to have it be a reflexive conversation is very important in that sense, so that people completely understand thoroughly why we're transitioning, not necessarily transitioning, why we're enhancing something in the classroom.
And it really wasn't an enhance. And when you start to look at it a little bit, there were other platforms being used. They weren't systematized. There wasn't equity. There were some good platforms here and questionable platforms. People were using them for the last 15 plus years.
That's right.
Platforms have been used.
Dr. Chatur?
Really, our goal was to have equity. Regardless of what grade or who your teacher is in the district, our goal is to make sure that you walk away from that grade level with the same opportunity to have the same knowledge. And these platforms do provide that, or we're hoping that it will.
Thank you for that explanation on the different programs. And I mean, I really think some of these programs allow for the differentiation that is required in the classroom. It addresses each end of the spectrum and better utilizes teacher time to address the specific needs of each child. Having said that, I'm more familiar with IXL because my kids' schools have used that in the past. So Dreambox is different from IXL in the fact that it does all of what IXL does, but also sort of shows that scratch pad you sort of mentioned, where you can point to, okay, you're going wrong here, and this is what you need to fix. Is that really the big differentiation factor between both software?
IXL, a lot of people use IXL. They're used in other districts. It's a strong platform. If you look at national reporting systems about what's good platforms, what works in IXL, Dreambox is a level above that. It's the level of engagement. We also we turned off you can't shop in the avatar shop during Monday through Thursday. Like, we've turned off some of the gaming sides of it. Chris has that ability to go back around so when the children are on there, they're really working in the math. Yes, they can do some of those fun things later, but not during that 10 or 15 minute time. Khan Academy is another one. It's extremely good for certain pieces, but it doesn't work for everyone. It wasn't being utilized well. It was, pockets of teachers being able to try to figure out what works. This is a systematic building on standards, finding the prerequisite skills and filling those skills, utilizing resources.
When I went to school, we had textbooks, and you brought those home. You had a problem, your mom or your dad would read the textbook, be able to explain things. Things have changed now, right? So we've gone to digital, and kids don't usually come home with textbooks. So are there other resources that parents can use to sort of follow along
Is
the
this a
curriculum? and
second
help?
question?
Sorry.
Would you like to hold that till it's your turn to ask a second question?
I've asked most of it. So.
Well, let's ask Mr. El-Minyawi is patiently waiting for his first question. So let's let him
Okay.
ask his first question, and you can ask your second question later. Mr. El-Minyawi.
I have kind of an overarching question of who has access to these students' results? Is it just the school district? Is it just you guys? Is it DreamBot and Lexi as a whole that they're analyzing different educational, situations across the country? I mean, that's just kind of my overall thought. Not that it works or not, but I'm wondering who actually has access to that data. And also, are these programs something that are they available at home? And my son used Prodigy. He loved it, actually. But what concerned me was he was comparing himself to other students, saying, oh, so-and-so is at this level, and I need to get there. And to the point where he wanted the app at home, and the app was $65.
Right.
Okay, it concerns me because maybe I could afford it, but maybe someone else can't.
And that is why Prodigy got my thumbs down, because Prodigy came full at us last year because it's a free resource, it's engaging, but they had that sales part for parents. Like, oh, well, your kid could have this level Prodigy, but then don't you want to give them this level with the additional piece? Prodigy is a skill practice platform. We used to have a platform here called First in Math, and it became, and some people loved First in Math. It became that, wait a minute, in the classroom, you can't do this skill, but at home, because you started doing First in Math at home, all of a sudden you're way up here. No, your brother was doing it because it became a competition of who got the trophy. We do not want these platforms used that way. We want these platforms used by the student. We've had discussion with buildings about should these platforms be allowed to be used at home, or should this just stay as something that they use during small group here, because what we do not want, for math, I don't want an older sibling on here bumping up because the platform adjusts itself. When you do better, the platform adjusts itself. Then you come back into the classroom and you can't do that skill. But what we've discovered is the platform will readjust itself. So we're having discussions back and forth with the coaches, with the buildings, the individual buildings, about whether these platforms can be available to be used at home if someone wants to. There's no extra purchase price. The child has a license. The child can get on the platform. The hard part is the child can't get on the platform as easily anymore because of Clever, right? We don't give them the actual Dreambox link. They sign into Clever. They click the little box that looks like a D. They don't get that long HTTP ... Like, they don't get that. They can, and we can allow them to do that. But right now, we're having discussions about, do we want that to happen? So to that point, the data question, right? Okay, so that was the why we don't do Prodigy Quest side. The data part is that Dreambox, I'm going to speak for Dreambox, analyzes how a child solves an application problem. So in the algorithm, it analyzes it to give them the next thing. It doesn't store, it stores it to understand on the individual child, but it's not like, Johnny Jones here and here's his data. The teachers have lists of data, and that's part of what Chris is doing with them, is taking the data from those platforms, because we don't want them mindlessly using the platforms and practicing the same things over and over again. The platforms put up these little flags if a child's really struggling with a particular skill or concept, so that the teacher could add to, so then when they do pull them in small group, it's like, look, you were struggling on this on the platform, let's work on this together here. So there is data for the teachers. There's data for Lynn and I. There's data for if we were sharing it with principals or things like that. We can provide those data, but they're not necessarily having, they do not sell to a third-party source. There's different stuff. Lynn and I read all the details that we could find about the different, security measures of these two platforms. They're in compliance with the best that we can figure out. But you don't go on Dreambox and then when you click into your Facebook, all of a sudden there's 17 Dreambox ads because they didn't sell it over. And like I said, I hope I answered.
Okay. In terms of Lexia, it works the same way. However, if a child is struggling, there are lessons that are designed that a teacher can download. So again, there would be additional differentiation based on individual student needs. And they can go home. We can, actually, Lexia has a parent component to it where you can send home reports. We used it within part of the report card grading system for summer school, and it tells you very specifically, this is what the child was successful in, and these are the skills that the child needs additional support with. In terms of the home communication, it's an excellent tool. Again, you could use Lexia at home, and I think that has to be like on a building-to-building basis because it timestamps when a child is on the platform. If maybe they're at 80% proficiency at school and all of a sudden at 8 o'clock at night, they're at 100%, that would be like an indication to us that maybe there was some sort of help there, and we could work with Mr. Finn and probably have that taken off so it doesn't re-establish or boost up the child to the next level. So these are all new things that we have to evaluate and plan appropriately for moving forward with this new age of, technology to enhance learning for all students.
Board colleagues, we've each had one question. I know this is a really hot topic that we're getting some questions. Oh, you didn't? Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote you down because you were going to be next. Ms. Alexander Mann.
So this is supplemental, right? And I understand that now it's consistent across all the elementary schools. And so is it optional? I mean, are there teachers that don't care to use it?
The expectation is that everyone's utilizing it. Okay. Are there teachers who have frustrations with platforms? Yes, because that's a usage technology usually sort of issues with the computers aren't working or they don't have that, but we have heard nothing but we love this. These are wonderful. The children are engaged. They're on there. It's quality. We're getting data. The summer school teachers, the after-school tutors from last year.
Oh.
Can I ask a follow-up, which I think is trying to rephrase what you're trying to ask? I think the question is, if a teacher, not because they struggled with the technology, didn't know how to use the technology, but because they felt for this particular child, this technology was not working. I mean, they're in the classroom, in the room with the child, and they're seeing, is this what you were trying to ask? Can the teacher use their professional judgment to say, this tool, this child not working, not a good fit?
I'm going to interject and answer that. That we would have to handle on an individual basis because you have to understand that the expectation is that they're using it. So then I have to go to, is it an option not to use Wonders? No, it's not. And so that's the line. And so we would have to look at it individually and see what the teacher is looking at with regard to that, if it's an individual student, and it is definitely student-driven, we would have to address that individually. I would not be able to make a blanket statement because as a blanket statement, I would have to, on the record, say no, because that would be the equivalent of saying, I'm not using Envisions, nor am I using Wonders. And so that puts us in that gray area, which I would then have to say we need to look at it. If that is the case, then I would have to look at that individually based on the data of the student. So I wouldn't want to be backed into a corner to say yes or no, but I would like to at least put it on the table and on record what that analogy would be for
us as a district.
Did you get your question answered, or was that not your question?
Yes, and I have.
Well, you may ask your second question, and you'll be the first one to ask a second question since you're the last to ask your first question.
So, thank you, Anne. So, in terms of the timing, can you speak to when the teachers in the elementary schools that weren't a part of the pilot project, when they learned of this and when they began to use it? Was it in August, September, or last year?
It depends on the platform, and it depends on the building site. Overall, the teachers were aware that this was coming. They were asking for it. From a Dreambox lens, and I'll let Lynn reference the Lexia, but from Dreambox, they all heard it, that SPA had it. And they were like, when are we getting it? I probably have 3 dozen emails from different teachers in different buildings from last year saying, when are we getting it? And so they knew it was coming. The training on how to use it did not come until this year because we didn't purchase it until this summer. The summer school people were still riding on the after-school licenses.
In terms of the licensing, that was the same situation for Lexia. I can tell you that notification went out to the K-5 population, our teachers. Again, the notification went out. Not everybody engages and reads like, an email or an announcement that this is coming, but everybody was made aware of it.
Mr. Finn, did you want to add?
I just want to add, in addition to that, I reached out through the coaches, the literacy and math coaches. We trained them in the basics of how to use both platforms. In multiple instances, I went into buildings and did professional development with teachers on the basics of using the platforms, so that they knew, what does it look like when a student is engaged? How should this be used correctly? Talking about these supplemental small group kinds of scenarios, and also just, troubleshooting of like what happens when a kid can't get on, all those kinds of questions. So all teachers have had exposure to the idea of these platforms existing, for, in some cases, a couple of years, and, I've had supports in place since the beginning of the school year.
And the principals knew these were coming last year. So the principals were notified that Lexia and Dreambox, that as long as the contracts went through and the money went through, these platforms were coming. And we did that specifically because we didn't want them to spend their money on a different platform. Because some of them were setting aside their own, supply money or whatnot to buy IXL or to buy some other form.
Ms. Krejci.
I had what might be seen as a rephrasing of Ms. Alexander Mann's question. And it's, could you explain to me more what the driving force is behind this software? Because on the one hand, is computer-based instruction an end in itself, or is it a tool to facilitate small group instruction? Because you've been talking about it as, well, this is something that enables a teacher to work with small groups of students. But then in response to the question, well, what about the teacher who doesn't need this for classroom management? Then you say, well, it's great because it gives you all this data and it's necessary for all the students to have it. I guess I wouldn't describe it as supplemental if we're saying every student should be having it. It seems like it should be a core curriculum. But is computer-based instruction important in itself, or just great that because it can enable small group instruction?
In terms of the reading, it is a very specific center activity that is appropriate to each individual's student's learning needs, because during reading, block just the reading instruction, not the core instruction, where you're pulling small groups for individual teaching of different phonic elements or vocabulary elements. Students have the opportunity it's not the opportunity, that is part of the reading block where they do center activity. And in the past, how Sarah identified why we went down this road is we would put together like seat work in packets that weren't necessarily differentiated to best provide instruction for all kids. Teachers would try to differentiate 4 different activities during this learning block. Some people were really good at it, but we found that that was a need to fill a learning opportunity where we could see district-wide in our elementary school, we could see it with our state assessments, how many of our students are proficient at grades 3, 4, and 5. In most cases, they're not proficient because they cannot read complex texts, which is involved with having good phonics skills, good vocabulary, good fluency, and good comprehension. All of those things mean you can read grade level complex texts. So this was a way to try to address that.
Do you really need to ask a follow-up? We're way over time, and
Okay.
not
I
everybody's had
will-
their second question yet.
I will hold that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who's got a second question that they would like to ask Dr. Chatur? You had a second question. Would you like to
I
ask
asked
it now?
most of it, and I think Hassan actually asked a similar question. So to cut to the chase, since there are no textbooks and materials that the kids bring home, and these are all digital, are there other resources you can provide to the parents so that they can sort of follow along what instructions happening in school and supplement that at home? Because we need to do that, right? Education doesn't just happen in the schools, it happens outside the schools as well.
Our current primary resources, Wonders and Envision, have home applications and have access. Students have had that since we've implemented those curriculum resources. There is, if the classroom teacher utilizes that, many times they don't. They create their own homework or they create their own pieces, but those Wonders and Envision both have home components that they could use. And again, these platforms are not. One of the comments the teacher had made to me was about, well, my kids really like Prodigy. Okay, well, they could go on and Prodigy at home if they want. If they want to practice these skills, to use it. Once they see these other ones, it's working on it. But what it really does, and to what Lynn's speaking about with ELA, but for math, when we have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who are trying to do this grade level math, and they do not have the prerequisite skills that maybe are way down here in 2nd grade, this platform fills the holes so that they can get up to and be in core and work at that core level. So to your point about home, there are current resources that parents can have from those resources. If that's not happening, because I was seeing some head shaking, then
Lack
that may
of
be
poker face was kicking me,
Yeah.
and I'm not aware of anyone of syllabuses coming home from elementary teachers with information for parents about how you follow along with Wonders or Envisions. I think that would be a wonderful thing to do, because one of the things that we get complaints about frequently is, my kid has no textbook, how do I know what they're doing? Right? And that's a fair critique, even though a textbook is not the be-all and end-all. We know that. We understand that resources and textbooks, that they do not have to be only textbooks. But as a parent sitting at home, you literally have no idea what's happening in the classroom when your 8-year-old cannot convey that to you. Now, I just hijacked a question, so I need to not do that. I'm sorry. Where are we? Okay, there we. Yeah. I think he finished, and I think I hijacked it a little bit. Do you want to ask your question? Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's not so much a question as just my own experience. And again, my child is out of school now in college, but I can recall, like from elementary on, one of the things that would happen would be those daggone worksheets drove me nuts. It just was crazy. It didn't help her. It didn't do anything. And the other thing is that as she got older, where there were things like, of course, Khan Academy and other resources, it became this issue, well, it's optional, Mom. I don't have to do that, And so I would go on, like she'd say, I don't understand the coefficients of whatever, and I'd go on and I'd look and, go back in my own history and say, okay, this is how you do it. No, that's not right. So for me, I just decided there are too many, then it became just too many little options. So I said, got her a tutor, and that became critical around algebra. But when I'm looking at this program, I'm like, oh my God, I think this would have been perfect, because she struggled with math and all that stuff ever since. And even though she was getting these other linkages to these resources, it was too much in the air, like it was too willy-nilly. She would either have to figure it out herself. It wasn't the system you're talking about, where we know all of our kids are getting this, we know what they're getting, we can assess their levels, we can give them more, less, whatever, you can differentiate for their needs. And so I really love what I'm hearing, and I was reading about this stuff earlier this week, and so I really, really want to give this a chance, and I'm just going to go back to what I said. I want to just urge some patience on everyone's part as this rolls out. And I do see it very much advantageous to those damn worksheets and to just the inconsistent information that was coming home to me as a parent. This makes sense. So, sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. That was great. Yeah, it was your second comment. Go for it. Who else has a comment in number 2 that they would like to make or question? I guess my only question remaining, I have 2, but I'm only allowed to ask one, so I'll ask the bigger one, which is, at what point are you going to evaluate this, and how are you going to do that? Like, this is brand new for the district, right, that we have a single platform that we actually can evaluate, as opposed to dribs and drabs and things happening. So what is your intention around your mechanism for evaluating it? When is that going to happen, and what tools are you going to use to do that?
So Lynn and I, so part of Chris's role is to pull usage data to look at who's doing what. We're tracking who's getting professional development, which teachers, what buildings are using them, what issues they have in regard to just the straight usage pieces. But the data in regard to the students, we're looking at that monthly. We're planning to quarterly share with principals usage data and things. But where we see the real bang for the buck is as we analyze the data that is happening in the classroom by the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is the one that's looking at this data. We'll look at it as well, and Chris can provide teachers. So his next training, first training was, how do we get on these platforms? How do you use it? Second training is, now that you're on and there's some student data in there, what reports can you pull to help guide and plan your instruction from the reports that are in this platform? So Chris's second stage, through the math coaches, the literacy coaches, and himself, are to go in during teams, et cetera, and say, let's look at this data. And so we know these platforms are not, there's issue with it. Oh, Karen wants it too. But this is, our plan is a full analysis of this as it's moving along and what's working.
Is part of that going to be surveys of teachers?
Yes. So in order to evaluate the program, we will, of course, look at academic data, but there are an awful lot of inputs into our academic data. But we will continue to use our NWEA. It's our platform or not our platform, but it is our measure as we're trying to evaluate all our systems, or all our academic systems. But the survey piece for the usage piece is important. The survey piece from teachers is really key. And what else is really key is some of the walkthrough data that we can look at as we're going through, and also not just the walkthrough data in the classrooms, but the common planning time. Like where is Dreambox and Lexia informing common planning time as teachers are planning for student instruction? So we will have a multi-pronged way of looking at the program throughout the year, but really I think in the spring, we will give this full year of implementation, and then do those pieces towards the end of the year, and provide the Board of Education with a report on how we felt the implementation of the programs has gone.
So that would come sometime approximately a year from now? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I would say we would look at next summer in order to have time to pull all the pieces together. And to tell you the truth, it'd be nice to almost bring the New York State data in. I'm sure it will actually come up in our assessment report as we're thinking about, well, what influence our gains as we expect to have next year, as we did this year, and as we're expecting to improve again.
Does anybody else have a second question? And then I think we're going to let Ms. Smith have the last word.
super quick one, which was I wasn't I wasn't able to find our contracts with Dreambox and Lexia on board docs. Can someone post those or provide links to those so we can tell? Thanks.
All right, Ms. Smith, you get the last word.
So, and just to, I wanted to see if I'm right about this, and I think I am. Just as we're, when we are communicating with parents about their children's progress, I mean, this information is going to be a part of what parents receive, correct? And that's almost on that's a more frequent,
Hang on, you got it.
yeah.
It could be on a weekly basis.
Right.
It could be a very good, when you receive letters for students that are receiving like AIS, that could be part of the information that parents receive, just like what we did for summer school.
Right.
There's multiple reports. In moving forward, as I'm thinking about what you said, what parents would like to see at home to help students, even our Wonders program is linked to the online platform calendar that automatically can generate a letter to parents saying, this is what we're working on this week. This is what the essential question is. So we will work with our teachers to make sure that parents are receiving this type of information.
I think that would be so consistent with our overarching goal and philosophy about treating parents as partners, because as a parent who's been primarily an elementary school parent in this district, really, elementary students do not convey information effectively. I can't speak to the next gen, but elementary school students, how was your day? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. Who did you sit with lunch? Now 20 minutes about who sat with who at lunch and who's having friends, right? But in terms of what are you doing, you really get very little information, certainly not on a week-by-week basis. You have your teacher, you meet with your teacher once or twice a year if you're the kind of parent who has time to go meet with your teacher, right? And you're not at work when the teachers are available. So to have anything we can do that effectively says to parents, we value you as a partner in your child's education, and we value it so much that we have taken the time to send you a note that says, here's what your kids working on, because that's what the textbook used to do. Right? The textbook was an artifact that you could see what chapter they were on, and that just doesn't exist anymore. We don't have that insight into what's happening in the classroom, and the homework is usually a worksheet. It's totally disconnected. You don't know what that worksheet came before or after. You just know that they're doing this one worksheet. So it really
and they're
just
doing it.
They're just doing it because they're supposed to do it and they're going to get it done. But
that really, really helping parents understand the thread of what's happening would really speak to a number of the goals that we have for our district.
And you just wait till they get to, just wait.
Okay, I said you could have the last word, and then I think I stole the last word again. Anybody else have anything that cannot wait until our next opportunity? Yes. All right. Thank you guys very, very much. We appreciate it. Okay. So we had two things that went awry with our agenda tonight. One is that the summer school presentation and questions took much longer than we anticipated. Also, Lexia, which we kind of knew was going to be a long one, took a little bit longer. So we are definitely behind schedule. For the first time, really, I think, in well over a year, we're well behind schedule. So, things happen. So we are going to move on to our maintenance discussion. And we apologize for keeping you so late, but here we are. Thank you.
So we have Ms. Roaring is back to the table tonight, and she's joined by Mr. Dangler, who will provide you with updates in our maintenance department.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's very nice to be here tonight. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to start out by talking about our guiding principles in the department and how they align with the district's principles. Our vision, our mission, and our goals within the department are all in line with the district. One of our statements that we use when meeting with maintenance staff on a daily occurrence is that fortunately and unfortunately, our buildings are some of the nicest places that our students get to come in each day. So we try to make that experience as pleasurable for them and as easy for them as possible and as enjoyable for them as possible, and make their learning environment as well as we can. Great. Thank you. Our next page, we wanted to talk just briefly about our department organization and how our flow chart in the department is set up. Obviously, at the top of our department is Miss Kimberly Roaring. She is the supervisor who oversees all of my daily operations. Next underneath that is myself. I'm the director of facilities. And then we have two direct foremans. We have a day shift foreman, which is James Spooner Jr., and we have a second shift labor foreman who oversees all of the nighttime operations in the department, all the nighttime cleaning operations, any maintenance work that's going on after hours, after all the students and staff have gone home. It's broke down. We have we have 118 staff in our department. 17 of those are 0.5 employees, so we really have right around a total of 110 FTEs throughout the whole district, taking care of 1.8 million square feet of building space, 21 buildings, 19 of them are school buildings. We also have off-site buildings. We have Harry Gibbons, obviously. We have a new maintenance shop that we have to maintain. That's 1.8 million does not include the square footage of Sunshine School in Lincoln Park.
Okay. So when we look at the department and we talk about the strengths of the department, there were a couple that we wanted to highlight for you. In June 2019, Mrs. Adams conducted a professional development session with the entire department that really looked at effective labor management and communication. I actually, in my first couple months here, have gone around and met with each of the principals in their buildings. We've walked their buildings. We've talked about their questions and concerns. There is a tracking spreadsheet that we are following up on to make sure that all of those items are addressed and closed out. And we are working very hard on developing positive working relationships with our building principals.
Some of the concerns that were raised in our professional development, which we had a very high amount of positive feedback from the PD that we did in June. That was Miss Adams had facilitated for us at Harriet Gibbons. One of the it was a free area. It was a safe zone for anybody to say whatever they wanted to say, and it was really a good PD. Some of the concerns that came back were communication. Staff wanted to increase communication both in their buildings at a district level and a department level. So we're really trying to address that right now. In our meetings that we're having, we're having meetings almost daily now where we're traveling from building to building with Miss Adams, Miss Roaring, and we're meeting with the maintenance staff and all the principals. That's one of the key topics that we're talking about is increased communication. And I think really driving that point home and getting the understanding that if everybody in our department and within the buildings, if we're communicating well and everybody knows what's going on, it just makes for a much smoother day for all of our custodial and maintenance staff. Circling back around and letting everybody know when work orders are closed out and not having that wondering thought is, has it been taken care of, has it not been taken care of? It really is, has been helping quite a bit, and I think that the entire maintenance staff is really on board with that. We've been talking about clearly defined roles and responsibilities. We recently completed a full assessment of the district through what's called a CAP program. It's the Custodial Cost Analysis Program that Hilliard provides free of charge because we purchase a lot of our cleaning products from them. What we've done is gone around to every space in the district and completed a full analysis, measured square footage. All of the fixtures have been accounted for, all the desks are accounted for, windows are accounted for, and all of that is compiled into a software program that we input all that data into that program, and then the runs are developed. The runs are the cleaning, what each custodian or what each cleaner is responsible for cleaning. So there's no more wondering if John is doing more than Joe or if Lisa is cleaning more than Shirley. We know just by looking in the program exactly who's cleaning what, and it really takes a lot of the guesswork out of the program, and it ensures fairness and equity because a lot of our staff have been in these buildings for a long amount of time, many years, And it's sometimes, now that we're looking at it, we see that the runs are not balanced. So balancing them out, it helps with the morale of the department, and like I said, it just ensures fairness and equity. And it ensures that our buildings are being cleaned in a timely manner. Somebody's not cleaning 40,000 square feet when somebody down the hall is only cleaning 10,000 square feet. So it really has been a true positive piece to our department, the CAP program, and it's we're actually doing an additional training on that tomorrow. Hilliard is coming into my office and training myself and my supervisors on some of the more detailed work that you can do with this program. It also has an inspection portal as part of the program. So we are going to be, we've always done inspections, not to this extent, but we will be doing them, and it interfaces with the runs. So it's very, very useful. We can go through the program when we do our inspections, and there's no questions. Each of our foremans will have a binder, a large 3-ring binder that they will know if somebody's out, what exactly that person is supposed to be doing for that day. So if they're doing an inspection, they know exactly who was supposed to be doing it, when it was supposed to be done, and at what frequency it was supposed to be completed. So our professional development, we're looking to have our supervisors trained. We have 2 main supervisors that work right in Harriet Gibbons. Something that I'm looking to do and the district is looking to do that we haven't done in the past is send them away to some new supervisors trainings. I know BOCES puts on a few of those each year. I think it's very important because a lot of times they have the skill set to do the work, but maybe not necessarily they've never really been trained on some of the tactics that we use to properly supervise our staff and to do it. We don't have this problem now with my direct staff at Harriet Gibbons, but maybe the tact and the professionalism to kind of deliver the message that we need to deliver and make that, and drive that point home. More so, we run into that a lot of times out into the buildings. We have approximately 26 supervisors district-wide, if you count the custodial staff that are civil service. Those are all supervisory positions. So we really want them to be trained as well and not just throw them into these positions because they scored well on a test and then expect them to be good supervisors. We want them to be very good supervisors, and we want to mentor them and make them the best that they can very possibly be. So I think that the professional development aspect of it is very important. Conflict resolution, working relationships, we've actually sent 2 of our main supervisors already away to one of those classes that was put on by BOCES, and they both came back and said it was fantastic. They had never been to anything like that before. They would love to do more of it, and they were really excited and kind of amped up when they came back to my office and brought back the deliverables that come back with that type of training. So it was really good. It was well worth it. BOCES has a lot of good programs at my level and below for supervisors, and it's very good. The effective supervisor supervision and evaluation, I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. We're really holding our supervisors accountable right now. The expectations have been elevated, and everybody is on board with that, and everybody's aware of that, if somebody holds a title in one of our buildings and they're being paid to do that work, then there's an expectation that that work is to be completed and that it's not a half step, that it has to be done. So, fiscal management, obviously, we have restraints. We know that. We're looking at our budget very closely this year. We're really looking at the overtime. We're implementing new procedures to help curl the overtime back quite a bit, actually. We have some processes in place, and I've signed off on some payroll today, and I can tell you that it is working very well. And I'm happy to see that. It's been a long time coming for this type of process. We're also looking at other measures throughout the fiscal year, throughout our year, on how we can save money in other areas without it affecting students and families. So we're still supplying the amount of coverage so our buildings are open to the community and open to the families on the weekends. We understand that our students have high needs as far as using our buildings on weekends. A lot of them are community centers. We're not looking to take that away, but what we're looking to do is while we have staff in those buildings, we're also assigning them other duties to take care of. So if you're working on a Saturday because there's civil service or because there's a basketball tournament going on in your building, our staff is now being assigned a list of duties and expectations so we can take advantage of those hours that they're there working on. And we're going to have them, we are already having them complete work orders and getting into areas that they normally could not get in during a normal work day because there's staff and students in the building. So it's a little change, and it's, some of them, they understand, and it's an expectation. It's a clear expectation. If they're going to work the overtime, they're going to be asked to complete other duties in the building, so it's very clear to them.
So some next steps for the department. We talked a little bit about some leadership professional development, and we want to be very deliberate about some of that, not just at the foreman level, but also as we look at some of the lead custodians that have been promoted from within to our buildings and make sure that they have the right tools and supports to be successful in those positions. Brian is doing monthly building lead meetings, so each month it comes in 2 groups, so every other week they're doing a lead meeting to kind of support that process. As you mentioned, there's a checklist that goes with the CAP program, and that is going to be deployed not only to himself and the foreman, that will also be used by our building principals, myself when I walk through buildings, just so we can do those spot checks as well and provide feedback to the employees. With that comes a level of accountability in the department in terms of this is your scope of work, have you completed your scope of work, were there issues today that caused you not to be able to complete the full scope of work, and having those critical conversations. Lastly, as Mr. Dengler mentioned a little earlier, Mrs. Adams, myself, and he are meeting with each of the buildings, and we are having meetings with the principals and the custodial staff in those buildings. And some of that is a follow-up to the June professional development, but it's also an opportunity to kind of roll out to them some of those new expectations and new processes and procedures and reinforce that from that level. Questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's been a very long time, if ever, since we had a presentation from the maintenance department. I think possibly never. So it's really informative. We learn a lot every time people come and speak with us. So board colleagues, who would like to go first? Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much. I think I want to just say, there are many folks in our system who maybe don't always get the appreciation that I think are due. And I personally, and I'm sure the board would agree with me, that what you do, what your staff does, matters a great deal, and you started out by saying that. I mean, if we've got trash on the floor, that's not going to help, the morale of the building, both staff or adults. If we've got nasty bathrooms, that's the same thing. And so I just want to say that and reiterate what our superintendent has said too. You are so important. The work you do daily, nightly is so important to the learning environment, the teaching environment, and it would just be not good to not have you. So thank you very much, and appreciate all the steps you're taking to improve things in your department, and and we'll all be very grateful for it, but wanted to also just let you know how much you are appreciated. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
Hello and good evening, and it's very nice to meet you in person. I'm a member of the Facilities Committee, so we talk about the work that you do in a very abstract way, of course, so it's very nice to see you in person. I have a question about is there a difference between if a leader in a building identifies an issue versus someone from the public? As you know, our buildings aren't private, so people are in there at all different times. Is there a different trajectory for how these things get resolved?
Typically, if a building leader, are you talking about a principal or a leader in the maintenance department? So if a principal was to bring a concern forward, it would be vetted directly through our lead custodian of the building. And then if there was a concern for something that needed to be repaired, we have an electronic work order system, and a work order would be inputted in. It gets sent to my office, at which time there are several of us who oversee and run that system, and then it is distributed throughout the department to the appropriate staff to be completed. If there was somebody within the community who has a concern with the building, sometimes they call me directly. Sometimes they will call Academy Park and it will be turned over to me, or they will talk to the building principal, and the building principal will either put in the request to my office. So there are several different ways that it will end up typically the end of it is at my office where it will end up. But there may be different avenues to get it there.
If I may interject, so there's no difference in terms of how something is prioritized. So it doesn't matter whether it comes from the school or from a community member. If it is a safety hazard, it's treated with high priority. And then we do prioritize, because we have to be able to prioritize. If we have a list of 10 work orders, we can't do all 10 at one time. So we do look at health and safety first. That would be the highest priority. And then we prioritize after that as to how jobs are assigned out to complete, be it in the same building or district-wide. But where it comes from doesn't change the significance of that importance.
Anyone? Mr. El-Manyawi.
So, more of a comment. I was actually a janitor before, and I understand how hard that work is. So thank you, and thank you to your staff. I also really like this program that you talked about that kind of is almost like an asset management program where you mapped every single window, and I think that's fantastic. I think that actually can be used for more than just job, divvying up. So thank you very much.
Anyone else? Ms. Wilson.
I also enjoyed the part of your presentation that was talking about the shift from simply supervision to leadership, and I think that's basically a path to highly effective teams. So I appreciate that that's a focus and a priority as well.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar in my sort of closing comment, that we really appreciate watching your department become more professional, right? And that is really what you just described to us tonight, is bringing the department to a more professional status. And what we have often said, the superintendent says frequently, and the board says frequently as well, is that we need a circle of respect in our buildings, right? The teachers need to respect the custodians need to respect the TAs, vice versa. The kids need to treat the custodians with respect, vice versa. And all of that is based on a confidence in that people are doing their jobs effectively. That builds that circle of respect, because it's respect that's earned. And that is really wonderful to hear about your department moving to that next professional level where they will get the respect that they obviously deserve, but also to earn it by doing it with incredible excellence, which is what we're moving for in every area of this district. Anyone else? Thank you very much. And again, we apologize for keeping you here so late.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the NYSBA resolution. I'm just bringing up the resolution. Somebody can probably bring that up on the screen as well so we can see it. For context, for people listening at home, because everybody still in the room knows this, we are going to a conference for the New York State School Boards Association in a couple of weeks. The reason that New York State School Boards Association is important is twofold. One, they provide training to school board members, which can be very good. We've all learned a lot from them. But also, they have an extensive lobbying apparatus, so they work to try and get the state legislature to do what needs to be done to the benefit of our schools. So, Andre, you just need the actual board docs with the words there to start. That's perfect. Thank you. And so what happens at the conference is that there is an annual meeting of the New York State School Boards Association, and all of the school boards around the state who belong to the New York State School Boards Association will vote on the resolutions that will be adopted by the New York State School Boards Association, which will guide their lobbying efforts for the next year. So they put out a few weeks ago a book, which I forwarded to you all, which describes all of the resolutions that they are considering. Some of those come from their resolutions committee directly, some of them come from other school districts, and one of them this year for the first time came from us. So this is something that we are doing as we also strive to become an excellent, to be an excellent school board, as we ask every department to be excellent, as we are looking for how we can boost our signal, as is the expression that I have learned from Ms. Wilson, to make sure that our signal is getting addressed at New York State School Boards Association as well, so that when it comes to lobby, they will, if the resolution is actually adopted, lobby on our behalf for this issue that we find very important, which is the transportation issue that we spoke about a few moments ago. So we are also becoming more professional in how we attend to which way we vote on these resolutions. The first couple of years we went to the conference, whoever went in and voted in the meeting just voted however they thought was a good idea, and that's what we did. Then last year we did talk about it at the board meeting, but we didn't have any preparatory material, and it was very difficult because there's like 60 resolutions or 25 resolutions or something, and so how are we going to discuss this? So this year, the Government Relations Committee discussed the resolutions, and we are coming to you with this proposal, which you have before you, which would be, and will not vote on this tonight, we're going to vote on this in 2, but this would be the resolution that we would, and I should make clear that New York State School Boards Association Resolutions Committee, which I learned about, is not really a committee of staff, it's truly a school board member-driven committee and staff. Unlike here, where most of the time the staff brings us a recommendation and we adopt it, they do not do it that way. The Resolutions Committee really does drive all of the decisions about what resolutions to put and whether to put them on the yes list or the no list. So they come to us with 2 lists. The list the Resolution Committee recommends we support, the list the Resolutions Committee suggests we oppose. And based on our conversation in government affairs, we are recommending that we go with the recommendation of the Resolutions Committee for everything except for Resolution 7. And Resolution 7 is the resolution about substantial